Okay, we'll get started. Prior to tonight's council, there was an executive session was held. The executive session related to collective bargaining with the fire department. One vote was taken, total 7-0. If we could move on now to our consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, we are sitting as the Board of License Commissioners. We have a daily liquor license, Class F, Highland Park Preservation Society, 21 Beach Street.
Move to approve. Second. For
All
the
those-
date of October 12th, 2019, from 12 to 8 p.m.
At 706 Park
There you go.
Thank you for the clarification. We have a motion and a second.
Mr. President, I just want to ask, I assume if there were any concerns about the use of the fireworks there, it would have been already voiced to us, yeah?
All three events without a hitch.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. On to minutes from our council meeting of August 26th, along with executive minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And we have tax vouchers, 2019-0909-1 to 2019-0909-2.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. On to our town administrator's report. Mr. Rayner.
Good evening, Mr. President, Council, ladies and gentlemen. Our next e-waste collection will be this Saturday at the Portsmouth High School from 9 to 12 in the morning. The event is open to all residents. We've held two like events so far this year, and we've collected over 18 tons of electronic waste. In addition to the e-waste collection day, we will be collecting hard plastics at the transfer station on Saturday, September 21st, from 8 to noon in the morning. This event is to transfer station sticker holders only. And then there is going to be another scrap metal event on Saturday, October 5th, and that'll be held in the lower area of the transfer station, and that is open to all Portsmouth residents.
Sorry, could you repeat the date of the e-waste, please?
Yeah, e-waste is this Saturday, this coming Saturday. With regard to the capital improvement plan, each department head and division managers, all the department heads and division managers have met with me to discuss the status of the current CIP, and they provided input for the rolling 5-year capital improvement plan. Our next step will be to consolidate the inputs into a draft document for a round of discussions with staff for the purpose of prioritizing our needs. After that, the finance director and myself will present that to the council for your input, and I anticipate that will be done in October. With respect to Mount Hope Park, DPW has completed their work, and as previously reported, our focus was on making the park safe for public use. The fence barring entrance has been removed, and the park is now open for public enjoyment. I'd like to again thank our DPW department for making this project happen, and Brian's here. Thank you, Brian. With regard to the financial audit, the audit for our 2018-19 fiscal year commenced today. This week we'll focus on interviews, gathering of financial statements, and testing of our internal controls and compliance with government accounting standards. Audit field work will take place October 7th to the 25th. The auditor is committed to a financial statement delivery date no later than December 31st and a single audit / compliance delivery date no later than March 31st. Additionally, I received word this morning of an excessive amount of dust being blown off mounds of dirt at Tank Farm 1. I've discussed this matter with Cornelia Mueller, who is the Community Planning Liaison Officer at the Naval Station. Those mounds of dirt are piles of soil which have been decontaminated. As cleanup work has progressed, a contaminant has been discovered which cannot be treated by the current method. Until a solution is developed, the contractor that the Navy has hired has suspended their cleanup work. We discussed the blowing dust, and the Navy has directed the contractor to keep the mounds of soil wet to prevent any further dust from blowing in the vicinity. And I'm sure that there'll be more information provided at the next RAB meeting. And Mr. President, that concludes that. There is one more thing. One more thing. This week, Brian Peters he was sworn in as the permanent police chief, and he is no longer the interim police chief. Congratulations.
Okay. On to old business number one. It's submission of stage one necessity of school construction 5-year plan. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris DiOro. I am the Director of Finance and Administration for the school department. The schools are here tonight to update you on our necessity of school construction application process, which we go through every 5 years to receive a state-approved capital plan and state reimbursement, housing aid reimbursement. So we're going to give you an update tonight of where we are in that process, and then ask for your approval to submit stage one. It's a 3-stage process. There's a letter of intent, stage 1 and stage 2. And we have representatives from Studio Jade here tonight to do a short presentation. Phil Gabo. Sorry. We have Phil and Kate here from Studio Jade.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Philip Conte. I am an architect and president of Studio Jade, and with me this evening is Kate Jessup. She is also an architect and an educational facility planner, and we've had the pleasure to continue our relationship working with Portsmouth Public Schools. We have been helping them over a number of years with their stage 1 and stage 2 applications. We have a robust agenda, but we will go through it painlessly. I want to talk about the RIDE process for those of you that are not familiar with it, our activities that we've completed to date, a stage 1 overview so that you know what we are seeking approval for to submit, update you on the findings from our facility assessment condition, the 5-year capital plan that we have generated. Kate is going to speak to you about the preliminary educational visioning and master planning approach that we have started to develop, and then finally we'll wrap up with what our path forward is for community engagement as we look to submit stage 2. So the RIDE stage 1 and 2 construction process begins, as Chris had mentioned, with the letter of intent, which RIDE accepted, which then invited you to submit the stage 1. The stage 1 is due September 16th. And it really represents the overall and high-reaching needs and wants of the Portsmouth Public Schools. It is not a commitment to bond. It is not a commitment to any particular project. We are not here seeking any approval for a funding amount or a particular project. RIDE, in the submission of the stage 1, wants to know what are your needs. What do you want, if you could have anything you want after doing some due diligence. The stage 2 document, which is submitted in February, that is the response to the needs. That is the solution. Those are the projects that have specific dollar amounts tied to it. So in September, we are submitting the needs, and in February, you're submitting the solution to that. And as we conclude this presentation, we'll talk about the process that will get us there. In May of 2020, the School Building Authority would then approve your stage 2 application, your project, your requested dollar amount, and issue a memorandum of agreement, which means this is the project you're doing, this is the amount of reimbursement you will receive, and then you will move on to a bond vote in November of 2020 to seek community support of that effort. If that bond vote is successful, then you will then go and solicit design proposals, you'd begin the design work, and you would likely start any major construction project in the spring of 2022. And the overall construction of your plan would likely be completed by the summer of 2025. So we are at the beginning of a long process. So the activities we've completed to date, we have done a lot of data gathering on Portsmouth Public Schools. We've conducted demographic studies so that those studies can support the projects that are inevitably determined. We've conducted facilities assessments, which we're going to talk about. We've had principal, teacher, student interviews and surveys so that we could start to determine what that high-level educational master plan should be. Obviously, we want the facilities to support that. We've had our Educational Legacy Summit, which some of you have participated in. There is a website called portsmouthlegacyplan.com that references that and has a very nice video of where Portsmouth Public Schools sees themselves going. So the RIDE Stage 1 document, which you may have received, is about a 500-page document. A lot of it is boilerplate. A lot of it is specific data to your facilities. Of particular interest is obviously the statement of interest and justification, the beginning part of the document. Why are you submitting this application to RIDE, seeking approval to take the next steps? In there, there's also the facilities assessment, our 5-year capital plan, the demographic study, a lot of other things that really serve as supporting documentation. So I do want to share with you the findings of our facility condition assessment. So we had teams of architects and engineers go through all of the facilities, all 4 of them, with a prioritization and reason approach that would basically determine what are the needs of the facilities if we wanted to bring them back to like new construction when they were built. For example, if we were to go into Melville and replace, repair, renovate everything to the way it was originally constructed. We developed that over a 10-year period, and we developed a series of priorities, 1 through 4, and they are identified in that document. When we did that to all 4 schools, we came up with a 10-year need of about $73 million. The high school and the middle school are equal at about 39% of that, and Melville and Hathaway are equal at about 11%. So if you were to say, what would it take to make all of our schools brand new back to the time that they were built, making no changes in terms of educational improvement, enhancements, or anything like that, you'd be looking at a 10-year project of about $73 million. Now, the goal is to overlay those facility needs with educational and programmatic changes. The way the buildings were designed and built 50, 60 years ago is not how they need to function to support the educational program that Portsmouth Public Schools wants to deliver to its community in 2019 going forward. So you have a larger copy of this. This takes that $73 million and breaks it down by school and spreads out those repairs over 5 years. And this would form a capital plan if this is what we were just going to do. However, at the bottom we have 2 additional line items. One is miscellaneous repairs district-wide, and another one for renovations and additions to those schools to satisfy some of the high-level educational programmatic changes that we have heard from staff and parents and students in the early parts of our investigation. And when you combine that, you're looking at a total need of up to $200 million. Now, I want to be clear that it is very, very, very unlikely and rare that any community goes forward with what their total need is. But it's important to know what that amount is. When we submit this as part of the Stage 1, it serves as the basis for RIDE to review when you come back with the Stage 2. If you submit a Stage 1 that says you have a capital plan of $50 million, and you bring back to them a project of $150 million, they ask for an explanation. Just as when you go in with a plan of up to $200 million, and you may go back with a plan at 75 to 100, they will want to know how you're addressing all of the existing needs. The ideal solution is to, when you make educational improvements and enhancements to the facilities, you are also addressing these facility capital needs, those roofs, those windows, those HVAC systems. So it's not just projects meant to keep students warm, safe, and dry, obviously very important, but if we're not creating the educational improvements, then we're probably doing a disservice, and we're missing the opportunity of those incentives that state bond that was passed offer, as well as a favorable construction climate right now, and certainly the need in going forward. Kate? I'll ask Kate to just talk about some of those high-level elementary, middle, and high school.
Sure. So we've had a number of meetings with different members of the community, members in the schools, students, teachers, parents, and what we heard generally along this process was that there was a strong desire to bring the fifth grade back to the elementary school. There's a few reasons, generally speaking, why that is a positive move. It is understood that fifth graders tend to want to be with your younger cohort. Obviously, when you have them in the middle school, there are some curriculum opportunities that you don't have in the elementary school. But what we're seeing in social emotional support and how we can really support our students, which is one of the biggest concerns in not just this community, but communities throughout the United States, is that having that model, the pedagogy that's happening in the elementary school, is something that will provide that social emotional support for the students in a better manner. So that was something that I think is first and foremost in most people's minds as we worked with them. And to accommodate that, we are looking at modest additions to both elementary schools. At Melville, it's a single story. Not only would you be building some classrooms, but there's a couple other spaces that you'd want to address while you have construction there, spaces that may be undersized or inadequate currently. So we would want to address those too, because you can't just add students to a building. Sometimes you have to add more, whether it's a gym or other spaces, larger art and music rooms to accommodate all of the extra students in the space. So we would want to address some of those other pieces as we looked at just adding the classrooms. Additionally, the classrooms are small, but they are manageable, but they tend to not create those true 21st century environments. The furniture has been updated in a lot of the classrooms, which is fantastic, but there's still some limitations with the big built-in casework that we could provide some flexibility as we move forward. And additionally, at Hathaway Elementary, currently there is no elevator to serve the second floor, and so students who have a need either have to go to the other elementary school or clearly have trouble getting up to the second floor. At the middle school area, the middle school is actually a very large building. So if you were going to build a new middle school like in Barrington, it would actually be much smaller than your current middle school based on the state regulations for size, which is a wonderful opportunity. It gives you a little bit of flexibility so that once you move out the 5th grade back to the elementary schools, you have some space where you can do construction while the students are there, where they're away from the construction activities, isolated from it. So the building itself will serve as swing space, which is a cost-effective process for construction. And we see middle school as the age where students start to become unengaged. Whether it's hormones or just the age, the types of curriculum, the way students begin to learn and start to follow their own track, it's a very challenging time. So it's where we see a large investment going in to keep those kids engaged and to really help them find their pathways. And we know in speaking with the superintendent and the school committee that pathways are very important. So really starting them in on those tracks at the middle school age so that they can really progress into who they're going to be and whatever they want to be as they grow older. So in addition to the ability to maintain your core facilities in the large building size, it gives you flexibility to also create some of those spaces that didn't exist when that building was constructed. So for example, I know that there's sort of a robotics space, but it's really just a classroom that's used for robotics activity. So we would want to make sure that the classes that we are constructing and how we're renovating would support all of those different things. There's also a number of science lab spaces that are not labs. They're actually just classrooms where science instruction occurs. So knowing that science and innovation is absolutely a career field that is growing in the future, and investing in that sort of technology is something we want to provide flexible, innovative science lab space for all of the students at the middle school level. And of course, the opportunity would always be you could build new because there is a large piece of land that you have available on that site. And there may be others in town, which we're certainly willing to look at. But generally speaking, we've heard a desire to keep some of the spaces at the middle school level, which, again, you wouldn't necessarily get if you were to build new. The auditorium is a fantastic space. A lot of times you don't have auditorium spaces that are reimbursable from the state at the middle school level, and it's really just a lovely space that just needs a little love. And so those are the things that we've heard about the middle school, and the ability to sort of work with that. The 70s open classroom style it actually provides opportunity for us to build more permanent flexibility, if that makes sense, where it's really very much open now, where you have to go through a classroom to get to another, and that's not always the best thing for distraction. However, it gives us, again, the space and the flexibility to work with the 21st century needs that the educators are looking for. And lastly, there's the high school. The high school has, I'd say, about half of the building is in very good shape. It is extremely well maintained. The classrooms are large, they're well lit. But there are some portions of the building that are in less great shape. They are the older portions. One portion of the building that was an elementary school at one point. It is rickety like an old barn. There are disadvantages. There's no light in some of the spaces, particularly in special education where the ALP program is. They're just not the most pleasant spaces to be in. And in high school, if you've got your kids engaged in middle school, we want to keep them engaged and really provide them those opportunities to prepare them for college and career, whichever is the direction that they will go. So for the high school, there's a couple of things that we see really important from the community, which would be updating that older portion of the building, perhaps making something two-story to create easier connections to the rest of the building. We've talked a little bit about creating interdisciplinary pods to build on the success of the 9th grade academy, where currently there is a group of teachers working together so that you have English, math, science, and social studies really working almost along the middle school model and team teaching, which allows a small school feel, and for those students to have teachers who know them, who are able to work together and collaborate a little more effectively. So we've talked about that. And additionally, the safety issue of the gymnasium being disconnected from the existing building. Not only is it doors that go outside of the building, so there are the sort of big concerns, but there's also just issues of the horizontal sleet that we get in the wintertime that's not always the best, so making sure we're actually keeping kids warm, safe, and dry in the whole building, connecting the spaces, and it gives an opportunity to create a heart of the building. One thing that we've heard a lot is that the kids want to center a place where they can feel pride and they can come together, whether it's a cafeteria that has a little more light or views, or whether we can take advantage of the old gym and create more updated space for sort of a media center and some of the spaces that might not exist in the current building. There's some wonderful opportunities in that building as well. So obviously, there's no desire to really take down any of your buildings. There's great opportunity we see, and are looking forward to coming up and moving forward with options that meet your fiscal responsibility and that support what the community desires.
So our path forward for community engagement, assuming that the stage one is approved for submission, would be to use the months of September and October to go to each school and engage with the community at that particular school and hear what some of their high-level thoughts are, to see if they align with what we've heard from the administration and the leadership team. In October, we will regroup with the executive leadership team to realign projects. This is what we heard from the community. It does or does not align with what we have heard. Go back to the building committee to check in with them on the size and scope of the project. Parallel to this are some high-level discussions on bonding capacity and the financial constraints that we will want to balance with the facilities projects and the educational enhancements. In November, we would like to go back to each school and share with them what we have developed for feedback. In December, regroup again with the leadership team and the building committee to make sure we're all on the same page again for the size and scope of the project. In January, seek the recommendation of the building committee, then the recommendation of the school committee and town council to submit the stage 2, and in February submit the stage 2 application, which will define the project and the dollar amount at that time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. President. What do you envision the community engagement or community forums to look like at each school?
Sure. So it would be a 2-hour event where we would engage with the participants in 4 different centers. So it would sort of be a round robin for the participant, where the first center we would ask them to share their thoughts on the school. And it could be anything. Maybe it's just a graffiti wall that we call, where they can write their comments, share notes, share their concerns anonymously, so that we just give them the opportunity to verbalize some interests they may have. Then the next center would be what we call our gallery wall. And at that particular center, we like to post images of ideal teaching and learning spaces, a variety of types, and ask people, and we'll give them a number of dots and say, put the dots next to the image that resonates with you. What do you like to see? You could put all 3 dots on one particular image if that means so much to you. That indicates to us what some of the community interest is as well. The third center is a drawing exercise center where we would have the floor plan of the school and pieces of trace paper with a program, and we could say, okay, it looks like you may want to move the 5th grade here. It means you're going to have 4 classrooms at Hathaway, and by the way, your art room is too small and your music room is too small. I don't know that to be true. I'm just making that as an example. And give them some time to see how they would lay that out. Would they put an addition here? Would they put a second floor on Melville? Would they move spaces from the middle of Melville to the addition and put the classrooms there? It could be anything, but again, it gives us an opportunity. Then their fourth center is a little bit more tactile. That's where we would have a sort of a site model of each particular school. Not so much at the middle school, because we think this is really going to be a renovation project at the middle school, but at Melville and Hathaway, where would you put these blocks? You went through the exercise of drawing some of these things. Now let's see where they would fit on the site. There are some particular constraints and opportunities at Hathaway. So it's just another opportunity for people to engage in a tactile way. And there would be representatives from Studio Jade at each station, making sure it's facilitated properly. Probably only be at each station about 15 minutes. We would start with a brief presentation, go through the stations, and then sort of wrap up of what people have seen and heard. And then we would do that at each school. That's our plan.
During the school day or in the evening?
I believe these are being scheduled now as evening events. 2 hours.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly? Any more questions from council at this point? All right, I just have a member of, oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So this is stage one, by the way, in case you were wondering.
Okay.
It's hard to send over to you. I just want to be clear about all this does is put us in the line at RIDE for reimbursement. As you know, right now, we currently receive a 35% reimbursement on all of our capital projects. That's because 5 years ago, we went through the same exact process. We started with, I think just over $18 million in need, and then we ended up submitting for, I think, $5 million. And that's those are all the projects that we've been currently being reimbursed upon these last 5 years. So this is just the start of a new 5-year phase. So we've been really fortunate to do all of, you heard Phil mention the 1s and 2s, kind of the warm, safe, and dry. We've done quite a few of those in our buildings. We put new boilers in, roofs, new windows at Hathaway. So you'll see a lot of what we've talked about for this one is considerations for the educational spaces. That was the purpose of the big visioning session that we had, kind of how can we really go to that next level. So I just wanted to reiterate that all this does is present to RIDE our need and our desire to move into the process so that in February when we submit a plan, if they approve it, it goes to the next stage in May where they get really specific, and then we would be eligible for reimbursement. If we don't go through this process, we're not eligible for reimbursement. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question. So clearly, a lot of effort has been put into this. You got a couple of pounds of paper over there.
Yes.
So I'm not, I apologize, I'm not fluent in what the RIDE process is.
Sure.
And so the school committee and the school administration has obviously been moving forward on putting together this submission, which is due soon.
Yes.
What specifically, in terms of the RIDE process, are you looking to this council for, to approve the submission? Is that what?
Yeah, so we're required, part of the RIDE process requires approval from the school committee and approval from the town council to even move forward with requesting anything from RIDE. So in order to be eligible for the reimbursement, we have to have the desire of both the school committee and the town council to commit to the process. So you're really committing us, saying yes so that we can move forward to that stage 2. And when we say we're going to have all these community engagements, I hope that as many of you as possible are able to join us in all of that. Also, Rich sits on our building committee, Kevin sits on our building committee, so you're not going to not hear anything until February. You will be keeping you informed all along the way as we get into more detail around the process. This is really, I'm sure you didn't look through 500 pages of this, but it's really quite just gathering a lot of our data around numbers, statistics, what our buildings look like. So they need to have kind of a foundation from which we'll start the work. So this is just, again, demonstrating what the need is if we had everything that we heard people say and that we want for the district incorporated.
Thank you. So given the,
Hold on one second. Something tell me.
think it was this. I
Someone's
did
out
it
of
with my
polarity.
hand.
Now is the microphone on.
We okay?
Al, we're good. Go ahead.
Given the commitment at this level, which is simply to allow the process to proceed.
Yep.
I move that we approve the submission of the Stage 1 Necessity of School Construction 5-year plan.
Second.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, but we'll just continue to take some comments, but thank you, Mr. Casper. Ms. Mars?
Thank you, Mr. President. I sure hope somebody has not been in the back room messing around with those knobs.
Give it a tap. There you go.
I'm Mary Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court. I have one question. And that is that the support listed in this document, which I've read through, a 35% from the state, how's that calculated? Normally, my understanding is it's calculated in a reimbursement of interest paid by the town in the following year in which that interest is paid. Is that correct? Is that what we're doing here?
I'd have
It
to
makes a
defer.
huge difference.
No, I'd have to defer that question.
To the school committee.
Yes. Reimbursement under this program from the state.
Right, so if you're bonding, then the state reimburses
Nope.
you according
I
to
think
your...
If
we need you to
could.
come up.
Thank you.
The folks at home won't be
So
able to hear you.
So if you're bonding, and a lot of our projects in the past have not been bonded, they have been paid by capital funds. If you're paying using capital funds, then there's a schedule where the state reimburses you, typically starting the year after your project is completed and going 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the size of your project. If you're bonding, then
I think we're having,
then the interest and the principal.
Don't touch it.
you're going to have to adjust to the microphone. Sorry, Chris.
Fair enough. So,
Pays to be under 5.7.
right, so if you're bonding the project and you're using Ryback, which I think we'd want to do, because if we do, we're able to receive reimbursement on the interest as well as the principal, then that occurs in sync with the bond payment. So when the interest and principal are due, you get your 35% back from the state. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. DeEuro. This is pretty much what I expected to hear. The point is that there's some calculations in all this data that's in this report, the spreadsheets on calculating costs, and we've done our own spreadsheet on this. But what I want to impress on the council is when you pass a bond, and it has these sorts of reimbursements on it, in the first year that you levy this on the taxes, you don't have any financial support. And I've calculated using the numbers that were in the report, and I do understand that there isn't any definition to what we're talking about here, although why we're sending a report up lacking any definition is a mystery to me. But at any rate, I used the 73 million. We're going to push the taxes up at about 8% in that first year if we use 73%. And that's without any other, which is approximately 1.8 million a year, we add to the taxes every year. So it should make sense because this is 73 million and our budget this year is approximately 66 million. So it exceeds the entire budget in cost. The other point I would make is that the spreadsheets and tables in the ending pages of this report deal with numbers like 200 million, and then they go down incrementally or so. It's not actually incrementally, but they go down in stages to about 69 million. If you take the current year's debt, which is about 24 million, and you add 73 million to it, you get pretty damn close to the maximum debt allowed by the state law, which is 99 million in the current year. And that's calculated against the total taxable property in the town, which means anything the council can levy a tax on. And that works out, as I said, it's 3% of that. total value of all property works out to about 99 million this year. And I would also like to point out, it's been higher in recent past years. If the value of property declines in a recession, you're going to drop like a rock on this number. So at any rate, we are approaching $99 million, because my calculation is if we get 73 million and we add it to the 24 current debt, we get, surprisingly, 97 million. So we're right up alongside the maximum debt. Now, again, I understand that we're saying that there isn't any plan here in actual numbers, but we seem to be talking about a lot of this in the tables. So I want to point out the $200 million is absolutely out of the question. It violates state law, even if you could get it past the voters, which I don't think you would be able to do. So also, my calculation is that 2023 is when this debt comes onto the tax rate. And so it's not some nebulous time in the far distant future. We're going to be right up close and personal with heavy debt if we don't make some kind of reasonable vetting of these proposals. Now, I do note that for the most part, the proposal from our company here tonight does not call for the construction of a new building, which is fortunate because a new building up in the new middle school up in Barrington, the last I heard, was $96 million. So, and they're constructing it. So none of these numbers have the usual cost overruns, which we all experience, and I could go on and on about that. So I would like to caution the council that, okay, we can approve this and send it up, but it should be clearly understood that no one in this town is making any kind of an analysis of the actual costs of these things, and that we don't make any serious commitment until we have an ironclad calculation for what this does to our bond rating. And by the way, I used 4% on the interest rate, and that I looked up in July, and that's because we have a AAA bond rating. Sorry, 3%. The interest rate is 3%. If you go to 2A rating, it goes to 3.7%. To the uninitiated, that doesn't sound like much, but I assure you it's a heck of a lot of money. Because if we do $73 million, in the end, we'll end up paying $104 million for that. So some caution, I think, is valid and warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. And just to circle back, the way things have been presented, again, these numbers are kind of the big picture look. If we were trying to address all of the issues, I think they're well aware that we have some work to do over the next few months to try to match our ability to bond with what the desires are for some of these improvements. I think there'll be a lot of long nights as we move forward in trying to do this, but you bring up all of your points about the bond, our ability to pay interest. These are all things that we've been discussing and we are aware of, and obviously everything would ultimately go before the voters. So we do appreciate your comments. A lot of them have been already echoed, but I understand your role here, and thank you for your comments.
Mr. President, I appreciate those comments as well, but they really go towards the stage 2. We're discussing stage 1, and I would move the question.
Okay, I think we've got a motion and a second. We are going to vote, but do you have any comments? I saw you standing there, so let's just get out of the way. Come on up.
Duncan Ingram, Sigourney Road, Portsmouth. Yeah. Warm, safe environment. I love those terms. Love the terms educational improvements, educational needs. Why not compare end results? SAT, ACT test scores, percentage of kids going to four-year college, all right, and compare the rest of the country. Are we going up or are we going down? Because that's the end result. That's what's important, and that was not addressed by your presentation. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ingram. So we have a motion and a second on the Stage 1 application. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay. Oh, this time is of the essence.
I guess so.
That's all right. Can I have,
Does he
oh,
not?
I'll have a different pen.
Actual paper, huh?
Oh, yeah, this actual book.
It's 2019.
Yeah, I know.
See the trees.
Yeah, we did it all electronic.
It's
They
recycled
want
paper.
this.
Yeah.
It's just the one?
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Just give me 1 second here to reset. Okay. The next item, under old business, number 2, it's a request approval for bid results for the Parks and Recreation Community Needs Survey. Mr. Rain?
Mr. President, response to an RFP which we issued for a Parks and Recreation Community Needs Survey, we received 5 proposals. PTC Institute, Performance Research, Kowalski Research, Analytic Insight, and the Center for Research and Public Policy. The review committee reviewed each proposal for 5 metrics. Their responsiveness and the clarity of the proposal, their experience with similar projects, their past success in working with municipal governments and their references, their methodology and their schedule, and the cost of their services. They were scored on each metric. In the grand total, you can see awarded 89.3 points out of 100 for the Center for Research and Public Policy, which was the highest. Therefore, recommend awarding the bid to the Center for Research and Public Policy.
Thank you, Mr. Rain. Any questions from council? Pretty clear.
I move we approve the Center for Research and Public Policy as the award recipient, or however wording you use. For
The awardee.
community service.
The awardee. Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And then on to new business number 3.
Or old business number
I'm
3.
sorry, we're on to old business number 3. Sorry about that. It's the Coggeshall School proposals. Mr. Talipski.
First slide of the slideshow. Good evening, Richard Talipski, 79 Cromwell Drive. I'm the Director of Business Development. I'm here to give you an overview of the potential alternatives for the Coggeshall School. Next slide. Current status of the school is that we had some activity by the Common Fence Point Community Center and some other activities, but there was some tenant concerns about airborne mold. So we had an airborne mold inspection done, and these were the results. The south wing was exceptionally high. North wing lobby was marginally high, and the north wing corridor was within limits. Now, it should be noted that there's no specific EPA or state standards on mold contamination, an airborne mold, and this 2,500 number is an inspection industry standard. The mold report resulted in a cease to occupy report by the town building official. So the DPW director and I took a look at not only the mold issue, but all the material concerns for both the north wing of the building and the south wing. The north wing was being used by Common Fence Point activities and some other sports activities, and currently has PCT, Portsmouth Community Theater storage, and Lions Club storage. To get a better idea of what the fire code was, we invited the state fire marshal to come and take a look at the building. We did that along with our fire marshal, the fire chief, and the DPW director. And we found out from that the infamous 49-person limit is somewhat nebulous, and the state fire inspector said it's much more complicated than that. So we're really not sure what the occupancy limits are, and they're based on square footage of each particular space, what each particular space is specifically going to be used for, and the egress from each space. So once we get into an alternative, we have to go back into the fire code and do those calculations based on the use. There is no grandfathering in the fire code. If you upgrade a building, you have to upgrade it to new construction standards. Although the north wing has some manageable issues for, we think, fire code and building code, the south wing has some significant issues. Next slide. Okay, your backup goes through all the alternatives that we could use, all the way from abandoning the building to demolishing it. These are the viable alternatives. For the north wing, there's two potential for remediation. One is a partial remediation where we do a general cleaning for about $1,600. Do all the walls, floors, carpets. Don't do all the ceiling rafters and all those nooks and crannies to restore the mold issue to within acceptable standards. The complete mold remediation, which is about 3 times that value, has somebody go in and do all the visible mold in the entire building. And we looked at 2 alternatives. One is to just get us back in the north wing with a minimum number of occupancy, and the second one is what I call the greater than 49 people occupancy, which is thrown into kind of a loop with the fire marshal's comments. The south wing, there's no partial remediation. That has to get a full remediation and a full remodel up to new fire code standards. The other operations are alternatives are to put the north and south wing in layup, and the final option is to demolish the entire building, just the south wing or the entire building. Next slide.
Mr. President.
Okay, the complete spreadsheet on the cost is in your backup, but this provides a summary of what the requirements are to do a partial north wing upgrade, which is partial remediation and fixing the minimum requirements for building code, would cost about $30,000. The complete remediation and other repairs to the north wing, which includes roof replacement instead of roof repair, comes up to about $56,000. To completely remodel the north wing without any fire suppression system would be close to $300,000. With a fire suppression system, that would add about $350,000 to the cost. For the south wing remediation, that's another $360,000 and another $60,000 to add the fire suppression system to the north wing. So the total building remodel, and this is to bring it up to minimum standards, this doesn't make it Class A office space, this doesn't even make it Class C office space, is a little over $1 million. And looking at layup of the building, that means winterizing it, doing all the layup, would cost about $4,500. Demolition of the south wing would cost $145,000. Demolition of the entire structure, $149,000. Sounds odd, but if you demolish only the south wing, there's a lot of interface work that's got to go on, which is fairly expensive. Next slide. Okay, we looked at the most affordable option, which is the partial north wing remediation. That regains us occupancy. It gets us generating some revenue from the north wing, but the actual requirements that we have to do in accordance with the fire marshal is now kind of in the air as to what the cost would be. So looking at the notional business case, we looked at $350 per each of the 6 classrooms and some use of the gym. That would gain us $5,100 a month. The operational costs are estimated at a little over $4,000. So the annual net revenue is close to $10,000. That's with full occupancy. With partial remediation, it would cost the town about $30,000 for full remediation, about $56,000. So you look at the cost for the town for the first year, it would cost the town about $20,000 for a partial remediation and about $47,000 to do full remediation. After the first year, after we did that, then it would be maybe more positive revenue generation. Next slide. From our RFP and further discussions, we have two potential proposals. One is the organization called The Place, which is the Arts and Cultural Center. What they propose to do is have partial use of the classrooms and partial use of the gymnasium, remain storage for the Portsmouth Community Theater, the Lions Club, and sports equipment. Then they would pay a fee for a space agreement, as would other tenants. Each individual tenant group would accept their own liability insurance. And the business case, like I said in the previous slide, would probably cost the town money. The Portsmouth Youth Activity Center, per the testimony that Mr. Duncan gave at last town council meeting, where we would provide a lease at some low cost of $1 a year to the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center. They would pay for all facility maintenance and pay for all utilities for some term to be determined. The Portsmouth Youth Activity Center would agree to a schedule of property upgrades agreed to by the town that would bring it up to building and fire code requirements. They would have to provide the fire marshal the square footage of each space, the exact use of each space, and the egress requirements for each space to determine fire code requirements. They would agree to comply with all state and local building and upgrade regulations, operation, maintenance, and occupancy. Any subleases would have to be approved by the town, and we would encourage them to engage other nonprofit and town organizations for use of that space. The town would insure the physical building, but the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center would accept any liability for any activities within the space. So the alternatives are, next slide, is to enter to one of the two proposed agreements or potentially delay the decision until the Parks and Recreation survey, because this whole thing does not include any indication of what the desire of the citizens of the community are.
Okay.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Yep. Wait. Mr. Mayor, go ahead, Mr. Kessler.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rayner, did you want to? Well, I just wanted to say thank you for putting together the numbers and the analysis. And I want to point out that we literally just voted to approve the award for the community survey, and I think I would accept the town administrator's suggestion, letter C. So I move we delay a decision until the Parks and Recreation Community Needs Survey is complete and reviewed.
Second.
The most overriding need is the mold remediation. I
Right.
don't think a delay of 2 months is going to change the remediation for the mold.
Mr. Ryan?
Mr. Tulipsky, do we know where this mold is coming from?
I've learned more about mold than I ever want to in the past month, but mold just naturally occurs in a place that has moisture in it.
Right.
Okay.
But
One
what depth of the structure is this stuff emanating from? Is it just out on surfaces, or is it actually into the framework of the building?
No, it's the inspector, and Brian, you can expand on this. I think it's all surface mold, and the mold inspection just looked at that surface mold and took some samples, but the real sample was the airborne mold.
Right.
If we go and clean that up, I think we will take care of anything that would
Although if there's
exasperate
in the
it.
building, you're going to clean the surfaces, and then a few months later, it's all
That's
been
correct, but
exacted.
part of that thing is to install a dehumidification system
Yeah.
for about $9,000.
These are not benign organisms.
No.
Penicillium
No.
actually causes anaphylactic reactions, and aspergillus is potentially invasive.
Yeah, that's
These
correct.
are not benign organisms growing in there.
That's right. And if you look, I gave you the mold report as well, so you can
Yeah.
see there's more than just the
Right.
one that's out of spec right now.
Thank you, Mr. Lipsky. Mr. Rayner?
Just to add to it, again, thank you, Mr. Wood, for this, there are a lot of people involved. And I know that there's a lot of interest in this, and a lot of questions regarding the recommendation I made. I'd like to start out that for 20 years, it has been recommended to the council that this building be demolished. That has not happened. There has not been the will nor the funds to do so. Absent the will and the funds to demolish the building, it has been, and it still is my recommendation, that any parties interested in future use of this building work together to prepare a recommendation
Rich,
for
they
the
can't
use
hear
of
you.
the building.
We can't hear you.
Just turn it on.
It's-
There you go.
Uh-oh. Got to start over? He was on a roll.
Begin again now.
Yeah.
So absent the will and the funding to demolish the building, as has been recommended for a number of decades, I have and continue to recommend that the parties interested in future use of this building work together to prepare a recommendation for use of the building in a way that benefits the town with the least impact to future budgets. That recommendation has been made for a number of years. So as I looked at what the working group has suggested to you in alternatives, I agreed with those alternatives, and I added one more: do nothing. Doing nothing still incurs cost to the town. If we do not demolish the building, there is the obvious cost of putting the building into layout status while still maintaining proper insurance for the structure. And then there are potential opportunity costs for not trying alternatives that may result in revenue to the town, maintenance and upgrades to the building, and/or social benefits to the community. That leads us to the two alternatives as presented by Rich. Entering into a rental agreement with tenants would require the town to make immediate improvements with respect to mold remediation, building and fire code improvements, and various other repairs and upgrades. There could be revenue generated if the business model succeeds, but it would take several years to recoup our costs. Additionally, there is no funding in the current budget for the building.
Right.
So money would have to be reallocated within the budget to account for the upfront and ongoing costs associated with that alternative. The second alternative was to propose going into an agreement with the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center. That proposal entails entering into an agreement with a tenant organization that appears to be willing to self-fund building repairs, maintenance, upgrades, code requirements, and utilities. That represents the least cost option to the town with respect to capital and general fund expenditures, but would preclude revenue potential for the site. And then there was option C: delay a decision until the Parks and Recreation Community Needs Survey is complete and reviewed. Among other issues, the survey is meant to, and we hope will ascertain the public's interest and desire for a community center. If this becomes an initiative for the town, the study, funding, and construction associated with the project would take 2 to 3 years to be put in place and executed. An argument could be made that a successful youth activity center in Coggeshall building could diminish the need for a community center. The most realistic opportunity to bond for a project like this would be after a voter referendum in November 2020. If the town waits and the initiative fails, it is probable that the organization desiring to establish a youth activity center in Coggeshall building will have disbanded. So I tried to weigh in my recommendation to the council the greatest benefit to the town at the least cost of future budgets. So I'll just conclude that, as noted, it has been recommended numerous times over multiple decades that we demolish the Coggeshall building. There has never been enough support to do so. Absent the will and funding to demolish the structure, and in conjunction with the original recommendation to use the building in a way which best benefits the town with the least impact on future budgets, I recommend entertaining an agreement with the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center. If the council agrees, I would further recommend that a contract be subject to the success of the proposed enterprise. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner.
Mr. President, I just want to point out my motion, if it is adopted, would not preclude action in the future after the survey is complete.
But it does delay it for 2, 3, 4 months, whatever the process goes.
Or a year.
Or 2.
I would agree. I mean, I think in the way things have been presented, we could do the study and we could see what the results are, but I think we just heard some numbers prior to this about bonding money and our ability to look at projects down the road in the future. Right now, we have a group that is willing to go in and do the necessary work and open up a center for our youth. And I don't see why we would not support that. I think we heard at the last council meeting, the applicant is here. I mean, he did state he wasn't looking for any money from the town. I would hate to pass up on this opportunity, and I would encourage the councilors to really think about this. Tonight, I support the town administrator's recommendation.
Can I make a brief comment?
You absolutely can.
As Mr. Rayner said, it's been the administrator's recommendation that we demolish the building for 20 years. We just approved spending $21,000 on a community needs survey that we're going to have the results for in literally like 2 to 3 months. I think it's our responsibility to wait those 2 and 3 months and get input from the entire community and see what kind of space they want for use for the community so we can have it for the next 30 years rather than turning it over to, yes, thank you for volunteering to do it. We would love to have you participate in the process. I think there's some great ideas from both proposals and there's some very valid concepts. I think whatever ends up taking shape will probably incorporate a lot of those elements, but I think it's important to make sure that the community, we listen to the community and know what they are expecting as well. I will also point out that the amazing effort by volunteers involved in the Kate Grana Foundation, or sorry if I got the name wrong, but it was a really amazing community effort. They raised a ton of money. There was a ton of participation from a big community. It was a very open process, and they did a fantastic job in our auditorium. If it is the town's desire to turn that building into a community center, I would love to see a similar effort take place where everybody is welcome to participate and be involved, and we can figure out how to raise the money to get it done.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes. I'm not sure who can answer this question, but as far as the mold remediation, whose responsibility would that be?
Under which
It depends on the
Under any scenario? Under the scenario where
We lay it up, we ignore it.
Right.
If we re-rent it to tenants, it's our responsibility. If somebody wants to take over maintenance, upgrade, and repair of the building, it would be their responsibility.
But the initial remediation would be on the town?
No.
No?
No, we're not doing anything right now.
Well, I mean, as far as
If we were to
if people are going to be tenanting the building, who is going to clean up the mold?
It depends on who's going to tenant the building. If it's renters, it's us. If it's someone that we're going to turn the building over to, either in a concessionaire agreement or a long-term lease, or a month-to-month lease, who has signed a contract with the town to take over those responsibilities, it would be that organization's responsibility.
And as far as insuring the building against injury, that's the town's insurance policy, yes?
Yeah, we will, as long as that building is standing and as long as our roles as capital property, we have to insure the building.
So if there's any injuries resulting from any activity in the building, that will, the insurance policy...
Liability insurance will fall on the tenants or the renters.
Right. So if, for instance, somebody developed an anaphylactic reaction after we gave this over to people who were going to remediate the building, the fiscal and legal responsibility for that would be on whom?
I'd have to turn that over to a lawyer.
Well, we'd have to draw up, I mean, we could include indemnity agreements and so forth, and in the agreement, there's really no specification of what the deal is to put into the form of an agreement at this point. But generally, if it's turned over to, if occupancy and control is turned over contractually to another entity besides the town, they assume liabilities and responsibilities. I mean, anyone can always sue anyone. When there's a lawsuit, you sue everyone who has any connection to the building. But if mere ownership would not generally make the town liable for if it's drawn up contractually in a way that should transfer the responsibility to the other entity.
Really?
Just like if someone does a slip and fall, if the town's not in control and is not running the operations in there, the town shouldn't have the liability if there's an accident or some kind of injury. That's why we would require the lessee or the concessionaire to have its own independent insurance.
I'd like to just follow up that even any remediation that would occur in that building would still be subject to having a sign-off from probably the Department of Health, the building official, before any certificate of occupancy is issued. So any work that's done is going to be done or would be certified. So, I mean, is there a chance, that the building needs some work? Absolutely. I think we've got plenty of reports that say the building needs some work. But again, I go back to the fact that we could do a study. We could do this study in 2 months or 3 months and determine that, yeah, the town of Portsmouth would like a community center. It still doesn't provide us any mechanism to pay for that building. That would be a bond, 2020. I mean, we're talking years down the road. I caution, why would we pass up this opportunity right now when we've been looking for a reason to get back into that building, to remediate that building, to open it up and make use of it? I don't know why we would pass up on it. I think the way the presentation was at the last go-around is it could be month to month. We could see a lot of things. There could be a lot of good that comes out of this project if it were awarded, to the Portsmouth Youth Action. That's just my opinion. Ms. Ujifuza?
Mr. President, I just want to make sure that we don't ignore history. I believe we had a similar, very well-intentioned group of volunteers push for fixing the Brown House with the notion that it would not cost the town much money. And the town eventually paid about $800,000 for a building that, frankly, it's been a bit challenging to manage. And so I'll say it again, the devil is in the details. We do not have a written agreement as to having these major repairs done that Mr. Talipsky has outlined, that included not only the mold remediation, but also the roof, and I believe there was the fire code. There is no grandfathering. All that work has to be done. It's currently not budgeted. I can't understand how anyone thinks that all this very expensive contractor-required work is going to get done and suddenly start making the town a lot of money. So I don't see the problem with waiting for the results of the survey. And I do believe that it also might help us to understand the best use for that building. And if in some ways I sort of take issue, Mr. Rayner, with you saying that there has not been the will. Perhaps there is the will right now because we're trying to decide how to proceed in the best way possible. So sort of to start from your assumption that there is no will doesn't quite sit well with me. We are trying to do the right thing, and step one is to do the analysis. And
there was no disrespect intended. I can only go by what the minutes have stated.
Mr. Hamilton.
We have in front of us an opportunity to have a volunteer organization, and Ms. Abbott just mentioned a volunteer organization that raised funds and did a fantastic job remodeling the auditorium at the high school. Now we're saying we don't want to have that same opportunity with a group that's going to remodel and take over the responsibilities for an eyesore at this point in time. It's unsafe. We have a group that's going to come in, we're going to say, oh, let's wait 2 or 3 months. In 2 or 3 months, they could possibly have a new roof on it. They could have the mold cleaned out. They could have some of the landscaping done. They could have new windows or doors put in. We're not looking to make money. We're looking to stop losing money on the building. It's a month-to-month agreement, which was what was proposed by the organization. If in 3 months it comes along and somebody says, hey, this is a great idea, we should go with X, we could go back and say, sorry, we have X, but we don't have the money to do it either way. To Mr. Aguiar's point, President Aguiar's point, we're looking at 2020, 2022 before we can even do anything with money. We don't have the ability. So even if the recommendation comes back and says, hey, let's build a community center, we're going to be sitting here for 3 years before we can do anything to it. In 3 years, it could be a community center. I happen to believe there's a lot of community support for doing a youth activity center here. My only hope is that Mr. Ingram and the Youth Activity Center group can work with Ms. Escobar and the Portsmouth Arts Group. I don't even know what your name specifically is with the place. Thank you. Sorry, Rose. And they could work together, and maybe between the two of them, they can find funding. And there's space. There's 6 classrooms in the backside. 2 of them could be used for arts, and 3 could be used for strength training. The stage is still there. It's still be utilized for plays for the Portsmouth Community Theater. I think we have an opportunity to have volunteers in this town to do things that just happened at the high school, to move the ball forward rather than sitting on our hands for another 3 months to 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. So I know we have a motion and a second on the motion to delay. Yeah, there was a second. Motion and a second. I know we have some folks here that would like to speak. I'll give you an opportunity if you could just keep it brief.
No longer than an hour.
Unfortunately, I think the...
I think not.
So there's no misunderstanding. Each have our own agendas. This is a cohesive group, all right? I'm not worried about that, all right? Because we love our kids and the people of the town, the parents of this town. I've never seen in 40-some years I've been in this town, I've never seen so much support for a project like this. I mean, it is scary. And that's good, all right? Because it's academic, it's athletic, and it's cultural. It covers a lot. I will make a comment. The people who do the mold mitigation, remediation at Yale University, all right, have analyzed the Coggeshall School and the reports we have, all right? I'll take care of that. Got a whole report, all right, of the finest, the most elitist mold mitigation people, and you're concerned about the medical is absolutely right, Mark. That's the issue. That's what happened. That was almost an hour of my conversation with him, okay? And that whole issue. He's a doctor, all right? And that's my part of it. So the mold issue is a big issue. Have I addressed it? You bet your life. I spent more time on that than I have been selling real estate in the last month, all right? So my point is, I understand that, all right? But if you're going to do it, fine. If you're going to rely on someone to come in who's never done it, fine, all right? I don't, whatever. But let's get the thing going, all right? To say that we can't work together, I mean, that's wrong. They will work together. The state fire marshal, by the way, I met with Mark Remeals today, our local fire prevention captain, and state fire marshal. If it's not a school, anything you want, you can do. Quote, all we have to do is abide by the rules. Building inspector, fire code, etc. All right? That's it. You want to do it? You can do it. And that's a decision that this group will make. Is it worth it spending $20,000, $50,000, whatever it may be, or not, all right, for the benefit of the children? The prices that Rich gave, and those are from contractors, Rich, do you want to work? You got official prices in those things? They were from Brian. Oh, we got from the official contractors? Okay. Yes. Okay, good. That's important, because they were a little bit lower than what I thought. okay? And that's my plan, is to take care, it's gonna be for the town, all right? And I just share that with you. The airborne mold mitigation, contamination issues, that is off the table, all right? And I say that if it's Yale University only lets us one company on the whole university, all right, of all their mold issues and all their places. So that's the company, all right, that we are talking to and have a commitment from. So anyway, whatever you do is fine. Like Keith says, I've been in this town since 1970. Been involved in the school committee, I've been in a lot of things. And I'm an old fart now, can't help it. But I have to say that I have never seen as much support for a project since I have been in this town, because it's academic, athletic, cultural, and to create better citizens. How many of the kids have dance classes right now? Ballroom dancing. Ever taught your children how to go up and shake hands with somebody? We have none of that in our town right now. It's gone. None of that is here anymore. That should be brought back. And that's what it's all about. How do we make our children better citizens tomorrow? All right? An SAT, ACT prep program down there. Where is it now? It's not. Okay? Yeah. They do it for 11th grade. Now they just moved it to 10th grade at the high school. 50% attendance. My point is, with the community support, all right, in this project, I will guarantee you, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. All right? Period. Case closed. I suggest to Rich, I said, do a month-to-month lease. You don't like what's going on? You're out of here. It was 3 months, get the junk out of there, fine. I have no problem with that. All right? And as it goes on, financial statements, whatever happens, we'll take a look next year. We need help, we don't need help. Whatever it takes to make it good for our children in the town. That's what the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center is all about. And the support from the attorneys, the support from the accountants, the support from people. One person wrote checks almost $250,000 for the gymnasium. A good friend of mine did not get one note of thank you from the school committee. All right, 250. Did you? I know, Lynn. Did you write? All right, my point.
Let's stay on.
Yeah.
Let's stay on.
So my point
let's
is,
stay
this
on
is
point.
a community. This is a community activity thing. All right, big. And I look forward to support your vote. Let's get on with it. If you don't want to do it, no problem. Find a better solution for that property.
Okay.
I will say this: I went by the school today. I made a comment 2 weeks ago about how it's damaging the building. Nothing's been done. So I don't know why. I mean, maybe you don't care. I mean, someone should take care of that building a little bit, no matter what happens to it. Each month, each day that it goes, and nothing's been done since I made that presentation 2 weeks ago. I don't know why.
All right, well, let's just try to see, do we have any other folks that want to speak? Just name and address.
My name is David Fiorillo. I'm the new chair of the Parks and Rec Committee. I'd like to say thank you to everybody. It's great that there's a lot of community support here. I'm not doubting that what Mr. Ingram is proposing is a good idea. It sounds great. I just would caution jumping into something that where the town has put in the budget about $30,000 to conduct a survey to address the needs of the town. And I'm, again, not doubting that what he wants to do, it sounds great. But I also think that we need to know what the town would like to see in that facility, because part of the survey isn't just Parks and Rec Department, but it's also the town facilities. They'd like to see what we're going to do with these facilities. And I think that those questions could be put on the survey to see and to specifically address what the town folks would like to see at that building. The survey comes back with the results in December if it all goes according to plan. I know it's 3 months down the road and we don't want to let a good deal pass by, but I just think we should, my recommendation would be just sit, take the community's feedback, assess that, and then proceed with caution. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cindy Kalady, Braeman's Lane, Portsmouth. I'm one of the founders of the Portsmouth Community Theater and current president of the board. I just want to keep at the forefront of your mind that any steps we have going forward, working with Duncan, that the arts be part of that, not cultural. We'll have 3 A's. The Portsmouth Community Theater has been performing at that space since 1997, when it was the old Penfield School, and then the Christian Academy. And earlier this year, when we were getting together trying to find funding, we did get about a $10,000 grant from the Rhode Island Foundation for equipment for the school and a couple of programs that we are now at a standstill as to what to do, give the money back or what. So I would like to see whatever happens, happen, know that we can get grants, we have gotten grants, and we will working together in the future. But just remember, the arts are just as important as athletics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rose Escobar. I live at 103 Greenfield Avenue in Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
There you go.
Just gotta get her better. First of all, I would really like to share my opinion and commend Mrs. Abbott for making that proposal to postpone any decisions. I think it's super essential. What we do for our town, our people, our students, every community member has a right to have an input. So I'm in gratitude for you creating that idea. I get a couple of points I want to quickly say. I know I only have 3 minutes. We all need a place. We need a place for the arts and wellness programs, opportunities. We don't have many in town. We do have a plethora of sports opportunities, and not that I'm knocking anything more for sports, but I think that the arts are not only left out, but they're forgotten. The only places that we have for arts right now are in the schools, and it's thanks to the arts teachers, including myself. We've had to fight like every third year. We come into the school committee or we come somewhere wearing signs, please don't cut us. We actually have one of the strongest art programs in the state, and multiple communities come and take a look. Oh, why are you guys getting all those awards? And why do you have 4 AP programs in art? So the arts are powerful and important. Our particular group, we came together back last October when we heard that the place was open, and we're like, wow, we have all these groups that are looking for spaces to practice, to provide opportunity for people to engage in classes or workshops or lessons. Problem is everything's so expensive, and then not only that, there's minimal to no opportunity. So a bunch of groups got together. I was initially part of the Portsmouth Arts Guild way back, and the Portsmouth Arts Guild has struggled for a long time, and they still are in an annex of St. Paul's. 5 years ago, they actually put in a huge proposal to acquire and utilize Coggeshall School, and they had a wonderful plan, and they ended up getting denied. So that's something that's been asked in the past and has not been looked at with any serious intention. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. One of my biggest concerns is that if we accept a sports proposal, and I know that it seems like Mr. Ingram has worked pretty hard on creating that, but I feel the reality is when I looked at the plans, there was only one room that was for any kind of alternative opportunity for outside groups except for sports. So all the other rooms were, in fact, sports designed. So I don't feel that that is, has any equality. And so my biggest concern going forward would be if one person was in charge, and it happened to be on the ends of the sports, I think the arts again would get shafted, which is a typical occurrence in town. Another thing I wanted to quickly bring up is we have this wonderful new Park and Recs director, and if you guys have not taken a good look, but she raised a ton of money this summer, and we're really proud of her. Wendy, could you stand up and say hi, Wendy? Yeah! She has just come on full-time, and she blew away. In a very short time, she already raised like over her salary, so we are very happy that you're in town. Thank you. So that's a venue I think that should be also investigated. Perhaps she also had a bunch of ideas and plans to put youth programs in there. And of course that was shut down on her. We had a bunch of plans. We actually got 3 grants this summer. So Cindy talked about one of them, but we have 3, so we have $22,000. And we just said, yeah, we want to do this, we want to do that. We got a furniture and equipment for the Coggeshall School, a full 100 capacity seating tables, we got a PA system, we had like 8 programs paid for, we have artists to come in, and then we were offering all of these services for free to the community. We also got another grant from, so that was the Rhode Island Foundation, then we got another one from the SOAR grant. So the, by the way, the Prevention Coalition is also involved with our group. There's a bunch of groups. So one of the other things before I rattle on and get out of time, our collaborative group, which we called The Place, we just called it The Place because we need a place to go. We need a place that has these multiple opportunities to serve everybody, not just the youth, but where do the adults go during the day? And where do, families go with small children, maybe mothers, et cetera. So our collaborative group came together, and more can add on, but it was the collection of the Portsmouth Arts Guild, Portsmouth Community Theater, Newport County Youth Choir, musicians from Common Fence, and those were the ones, there's more groups, but all of those groups have 501c3s. So we're already working with raising funds, and I love that Ms. Abbott also brought up the KGMA, which is the Kate Grana. I mean, there's tons of people in the community that would get right on board and start like a Friends of Coggeshall, and we could easily turn that place into a state-of-the-art facility. Look at Common Fence Community Hall, right? So there's lots of ways to do it. And I'm so grateful again that you're giving us a tiny bit more time. If in fact that Duncan's proposal is accepted down the road, great. At least you've really asked the community, and so again, I commend that decision, and I commend the council for following through on that. Let's see, lastly. I was going to say it, Maria. I want you to really take it seriously. Of course you will. But, sometimes we like to make quick decisions. Sometimes we're being pushed because there's only one option on the table. Or sometimes even tactics of push, push, bully, bully is not so cool. So if you're, it's really important to make a very serious attempt at finding out the true needs. And don't feel like, oh gosh, money's not here right now. Doesn't mean it can't be. Just over 2.5 months, I got $22,000 just like that. So when there's a will, there's a way, and we can do it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Come on up.
Jeff Gambrell, 237 Jepson Lane. I am the president of Portsmouth Little League. I know it's just another sports guy, I'm sorry. We have 270-some kids in the league. And under Ingram's proposal, we were invited in that, and it's really going to be beneficial to all our kids. They'll be playing year-round, practicing, getting coached, and I know it's just another sports thing, but in there's going to be classrooms, and there's going to be facilities for weight rooms, probably movie nights and all that. So, I'm just 271 kids in the league, and I can tell you this much. My 13-year-old, probably there 2-3 nights a week. Not only for the gym, because, it's somewhere to go and I don't have to pay $60 a month for them, but, I'll be there too. I'm a coach. Not only am I the president, I'm a coach too, so I see all the kids, and the needs are huge. And, I'd like to see, I was there last winter, so it wasn't something that we're just snapping a finger at and judging on. It's something we need to stop kicking down the road. It's a month-to-month lease, like proposed. It means nothing to anybody if you come 3 months from now when you get your survey back and say, hey, the town wants to do something with it. Renovations will already be well in hand and done, or not done, but going on. So the town's saving money. Just, I think we're kicking the can down the road and saying, another month, and I've heard it for a year now. So I'm in agreement with, signing a month-to-month lease, and I hope you guys are too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. President.
Mr. Gatlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to be clear. I made the motion I made, and it'll get voted on, it'll pass or it won't. In terms of the proposal in front of us for the Portsmouth Youth Activities Center, this document we have from Mr. Ingram is very evocative. It's a great vision. But it is missing, in my opinion, some crucial details. And even though it's month to month, I am cautious about representing to other individuals and groups in town that they can go ahead and forge ahead and commit funds and resources when 2 months later we decide not, due to whatever reason. So even though it's month to month and the risk is low, I want to protect others from being involved before we know what's the specific plan. What is that Yale company going to charge? How are you going to raise the money? How much money is it going to take to do all of the things you talk about here? Where is that money going to come from? And if it's fundraising, fine. Then in our lease, we should have provisions that say if you don't raise X amount of dollars by X amount of time or have planned to do so, then we can terminate the arrangement. I feel like there aren't enough controls in front of us to be able to vote, for me to vote today to say that I can support going ahead, because I don't know what going ahead would mean. Like I said, it's a great vision, but it's not a concrete plan. And you know, I'm happy to talk to the administrator and Mr. Ingram offline so we don't take up public council time to talk about exactly what I mean about more detail and more, you know, concreteness to this. My biggest concern is, you know, it talks about, we suggest capital improvements made, reimbursed by the town. Or, here we go, basic maintenance would be covered by the group and would be the primary responsibility of PYAC with town support if needed. I think it's very foreseeable that they'll go to make some minor repair, and in this, what is it, 80-year-old building? Thank you. They'll discover in the course of doing some maintenance or repair that it's a much bigger project, and then we'll be in the middle. We'll be in the middle of some, and at that point in time, the youth activities groups will be in there, and the town is going to want to rush in to help. And before you know it, we'll be committing town funds. I don't mind committing town funds, but the plan that's before us now is not fully fleshed out to really address those needs. We're going to be coming up, before you know it, on another budget cycle.
I know.
And speaking of which, I just want to say, yes, the Cogashul School has been earmarked for demolition for decades. It wasn't proposed to us in our last town administrator budget, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall any town administrator actually putting it in the budget for my memory. So to say that there isn't will to do it, I'm not sure that's been proven out. And maybe demolishing it isn't the best use of the building if we can rehabilitate it, but I'm not convinced. You know, we have this list of highly qualified professionals on page 1. But nowhere in here does it say what those highly qualified professionals actually said. Right. So I'd be looking for a really detailed proposal to know what we're giving the go-ahead to.
Well, and
thank you.
And I just want to respond, and Ms. Ringham, I know you're there, but I'm gonna, if you let me.
I'm speechless.
No, at the last meeting, I think the council was very clear in asking specific questions. Mr. Ingram was very clear. He said he wanted no money from the town. Wanted no money. The discussion revolved around structuring an agreement where the town was not on the hook for anything. So I don't really, they have to follow certain procedures to do renovations. That is all on them. Unless I'm mistaken, it was very clear that an agreement needed to be worked out. Now, maybe the agreement falls through because of something that the lawyers can't work out, but it was very clear. So unless I misheard something, I think the statement was, I don't want your money. He said it multiple times. And Ms. Ringham, just, if I could ask you just to, is that a fair statement? Yes or no? You don't want any money from the town?
Absolutely not right now. All right? And if, no, listen. I mean, you can talk about being against the kids, and that's what you're saying, Len.
No, it isn't, Mr.
Yes, it is.
We're
going to go down.
Objection
all right,
to that.
Time out.
I have kids of my own, Mr. Ingram.
You're wrong.
Folks, all right. Let's just...
And I will not be bullied into doing whatever it is you want, Mr. Ingram.
Vote against it, no problem.
Okay, all right. I think we're just gonna end it at that. I know. I just want to end it at that. We have a motion and a second to,
Before you go there, I just want to
yeah,
read what Mr. Rayner's recommendation is. He had four options, technically, and a couple of sub-options underneath a couple of the options, but I recommend entertaining an agreement with the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center, period. That's the town administrator's recommendation.
yeah.
And a lot of your concerns, and I have the same concerns, are ironed out in that lease agreement or concessionaires agreement, I think is what we called it with the Melville Park and the stables.
If I may, I have no problem
And that comes back to
authorizing a
us.
go-ahead on that with the understanding that nothing's done until we see it and we vote.
That's where we go. Right now, we're at entering an agreement. The agreement gets worked out between our solicitor.
Entertained.
And, right, entertaining the agreement is what it says. The solicitor, the lawyers that Mr. Ingram has, all get together, they work up a concessionaires agreement, they bring it back to us. Does that happen at the next meeting or 2 meetings from now? Who knows? Maybe by the time that concessionaires agreement's done, the report's done, it all works out in the wash. But to slam the door in the face of an organization that's trying to do good things, I think is short-sighted at this point.
Okay. So again, we have a motion to delay and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So was
I voted aye, I'm sorry.
so it was 4-3 motion to delay.
If I may, Mr. President.
Yes.
To me, delay meant not doing something tonight that would turn over control of this facility to Mr. Ingram or any other group.
Well, I think the delay was, the motion to delay, wasn't it, to
Until
delay
we
till
know
the
what-
result-
that's
to
right.
wait till the survey's done.
In parallel with that, I don't know if other activities could be undertaken. And so I'm not willing to approve anything until after we get the community survey back.
I'm not sure what could occur because the council can't direct the town administrator to enter into an agreement unless we have a motion and it's approved. So without any further action from the council, nothing happens.
I will make a motion that we, sorry, Mr. Mayor, task the town administrator and solicitor to begin entertaining and working out a concessionaires agreement with the Portsmouth Youth Activity Center.
I'll second.
And then it's going to have to come back to the council to go through it and say, we agree with this, we don't agree with that. Just change this language.
Can I ask
I would just say
As soon as it's
agreement.
done.
An agreement, not a concessionaires agreement?
Because this is a different model than
All
a
right.
concession.
Scratch concessionaires, just an agreement. Sorry.
Okay. So,
For our solicitor.
we have a motion and a second for discussion. Ms. Abbott?
Just wondering, Mr. Gavin, to draft up an agreement of that nature, how many dollars worth of your time is that worth?
This would be under my general retainer, but I wasn't going to start.
Money is
Eric-
time, so hours?
Well,
Mr. Chappelle, we have no proposal right now, so there's
Right.
nowhere to begin. I think it's on them to
Okay.
come up with a proposed agreement which fleshes out what the deal is. Until we get that, I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. The motion is to direct the town administrator and the solicitor to enter into an agreement, well, to draft an agreement.
Or entertain a proposal.
Entertain
We haven't got a
proposal.
real proposal yet, as far as I can see.
entertain a proposal.
Entertain a proposal. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Well,
Wait, we're voting to entertain a proposal before there's a proposal? Is that, am I clear on that?
No, we're voting to...
I think,
If they want to,
Sure.
if they want to work on a more detailed, fleshed
So
out
we don't have a...
proposal, we'll have more detail.
When there's a proposal?
There is a proposal. The proposal has changed from what's in front of you.
Correct.
What we need
Right.
now is a working document that says, these are the in-contract things that we are specifically going to do, that they have to sign down on the dotted line, and we have to sign on the dotted line. Until we have said agreement, Nothing happens at Cog Shell School.
That's right.
We can delay it for 6, 10, 12 months, 100 years,
Nothing
but
happens
we're just
without an
wasting
agreement.
time.
Do we need a motion for this?
Yes.
Can't they just submit a proposal?
No, because we need to have our administrator and our solicitor, they have to have our approval to go forward to work on this.
And that is your motion,
Yes.
which I seconded.
Correct. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So
5 to 2.
5 to 2. Motion passes 5 to 2. Okay. Thank you all.
Of course, we all know this is going to end up in Mr. Taliski's laps, but that's okay.
Well,
So I is the business development director. Okay. Now, on to new business. New business number 1, request approval of Parks and Recreation Committee bylaws.
Motion, oh,
Nope, wow. Oh, no, apparently, if we got a,
motion to approve?
Second.
The motion or the bylaws?
do you want to amend?
what's
What do you-
the,
Give him a second, he's trying to bring it up on his phone.
Okay.
You're going to go blind with that thing. You got to get a bigger computer.
You need a bigger phone. Get the 10R.
At least an iPad.
It's under how they expel members, terminate members.
Okay.
Which is, has been left to the purview of the council to terminate members from town council appointed committees, but in these bylaws, it would appear that it would be the decision of the Parks and Recreation Committee, and that we would be notified of vacancy. So I would like to remove that.
It says a determination will be made as to a recommendation for their resignation or termination. Notification will be given to the council to the town council of the vacancy. You're right, so, but it doesn't say the determination comes to the council before the vacancy is open. So that's a little muddy. So the recommendation of the resignation or request for removal, it's not termination, it should be a request for removal.
request for removal.
Should be given to the town
Submitted to the
council
council.
for approval.
Yeah, so changing the word notification to request for removal,
I'm trying to find it.
or just request will be given.
Not recommendation, I mean,
Yeah.
I have yet to be up here when somebody has requested removal of somebody who hasn't shown up for 5 meetings in a row and said, no, you gotta keep them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna happen, but to
It's a fair
Mr.
point.
Kelly's point.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
I saw it happen.
So under Section 1, meetings, Section C, 3 unexcused absences of any member in the town's fiscal year result in a membership review by the committee. That seems fine.
A determination will be made as to a recommendation.
To be given to the town council for their removal. Do you have that, Jennifer?
Yep.
Okay. Upon approval of the removal, the request will be given to the town council to advertise the vacancy.
It's up to the council.
Yeah. Is that the spirit of what you were thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. I have
Well
bigger
said,
font.
Through Keith, well said.
You have that?
So we have,
So
so we have a,
I will second Mr. Kelly's motion to amend, which we'd have to vote on first, and then vote on the main motion.
okay. So all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7 to 0. And now on the main motion on the bylaws, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7 to 0. Okay.
Approve as amended.
Give me 1 second. Oh, wait a minute.
If they resign, those are good.
New business number 2. It's request permission to conduct the annual fundraiser Race for Open Space in Portsmouth.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And now we have number 3, a resolution requesting the state of Rhode Island conduct a safety review of East Main Road with town officials and member of the public and incorporation of green and complete streets policies into town ordinances and the comprehensive community plan. Ms. Abbott.
I apologize, but I'm really going to make everybody listen to this, so bear with me. You read the title already, so I will skip that. But whereas East Main Road is one of 2 main arterial roads serving the town of Portsmouth and Aquidneck Island, and is also a major evacuation route for island residents. And whereas East Main Road is a state-maintained road. And whereas there were 180 accidents on East Main Road in 2018, and there have been 111 accidents in 2019 through August 20th. Of those, 39 accidents resulted in injuries in 2018, including 1 fatality, and 27 accidents have resulted in injuries through August 20th, 2019. And whereas using an average cost of $2,000 per accident, $390,000 per injury, and $6.8 million per fatality, the accidents on East Main Road in 2018 and 2019 alone have cost $36 million. Whereas several of those accidents involved utility poles, including 3 accidents between August 12th and 19th, 2019. And whereas the narrow lanes and close proximity of the utility poles on East Main Road to the roadway presents a safety and resiliency hazard, limits the ability for additional roadway improvements, and diminishes the scenic nature of the road. And whereas, based on annual average daily traffic value of 22,100 vehicles per RIDOT in 2000, this equates to a crash injury rate of approximately 110 injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled and 1.67 fatalities per 100 vehicle miles traveled along the 4.5-mile stretch from Middletown Town Line to Turnpike Avenue. And whereas the state of Rhode Island passed a complete streets law in 2012 called Safe Access to Public Roads, which requires the state to consider people of all ages and abilities in all appropriate forms of transportation when planning roadway projects. And whereas East Main Road north of Turnpike Avenue was repaved and sidewalks improved in 2018 to 2019 with no shoulder or bicycle accommodations incorporated, and Middle Road south of Schoolhouse Lane was paved in 2017 with no shoulder, pedestrian, or bicycle accommodations incorporated. And whereas Aquidneck Island's impaired drinking waters pose greater potential for health risks and increase the cost of treatment. And whereas stormwater runoff from developed areas is a primary cause of pollution to our drinking water supply, fishing areas, and beaches. And whereas best management practices greatly reduce stormwater runoff from roadways and parking lots and can utilize natural systems that have the benefit of beautifying these areas with vegetation. And whereas bicycle and pedestrian accommodations have been demonstrated to increase safety for all users, reduce pollution, promote public health, and increase economic development, particularly for tourism-dependent communities like Portsmouth. And whereas Major Amendment Number 19 to the State Transportation Improvement Plan has roadway improvements along East Main Road planned for 2022 and 2024, while the East Main Road shared use path is planned for 2020. And whereas our draft comprehensive community plan states that an efficient transportation network is essential to the economic vitality and quality of life of Portsmouth. And whereas East Main Road is a primary bus route through Portsmouth with public bus stops roughly every 1,300 feet, in addition to the dozens of school children that are picked up and dropped off by school buses along the road every day. And whereas planned improvements to East Main Road are a once-in-a-generation opportunity to comprehensively address safety concerns, reduce pollution, promote public health, and support economic development. And whereas incorporating safety and infrastructure improvements and providing transportation alternatives is a critical element in the town center plan and requires a comprehensive approach that addresses all of East Main Road. And whereas implementing green and complete streets policies into our town ordinances and comprehensive community plan is an effective way to help address safety and usability concerns for all users on East Main Road and other state and local roadways, and protect our drinking water and the scenic recreational and working waters of Narragansett Bay while beautifying our roadways and parking lots. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Portsmouth Town Council requests the State of Rhode Island immediately conduct a safety review of East Main Road with the involvement of town officials and the broader community to minimize future harm to our community and prioritize the road for safety improvements, including but not limited to additional signals, turning lanes, sidewalks, bike lanes or side paths, bus stops, pedestrian lighting and crosswalks as part of the programmed STIP improvements or before, and be it further resolved that our town solicitor draft a letter to the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, reminding them of the Complete Streets Law and advising them that the town of Portsmouth expects all state road construction projects in Portsmouth to meet the law's standard, and that the town of Portsmouth is ready and willing to work with state officials to ensure the successful, timely, and cost-effective implementation of this law on state road construction projects in the town of Portsmouth. And be it further resolved that the town of Portsmouth hereby requests the East Main Road STIP improvements incorporate the undergrounding of utilities on East Main Road to provide additional right-of-way for the necessary improvements. And be it further resolved that the town of Portsmouth is committed to assisting the state of Rhode Island in identifying any and all resources necessary to offset the cost of undergrounding said utilities. And be it further resolved that the Portsmouth Planning Department work with the state of Rhode Island for funding and technical assistance in developing a bicycle master plan for the town to ensure bicycle improvements made in concert with road improvements are strategic in nature. And be it further resolved that the Portsmouth Planning Department amend our draft comprehensive community plan to identify green and complete streets as a primary transportation goal with specific policies and actions to facilitate implementation by state, town, and private entities. And be it further resolved that the Portsmouth Planning Department work with local and regional resources to draft a green and complete streets ordinances that require all public and private projects, roads, drives, and parking areas in the town of Portsmouth to construct to green and complete street standards for implementation in Portsmouth in 2020. Let it be known, this resolution was passed and adopted by the Portsmouth Town Council this 9th day of September 2019.
Deep breath. There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Just one correction. I think you said 2,000 and not 12,000. Just for the record.
On what?
On what?
On the dollars. I think you said 2,000 and not 12,000.
12,000. Go with what's written,
Yeah.
please. While I still have your attention, there's one more statistic that I would like to add. I'll just say it. I don't know if we need to add it to the actual resolution. But the 5-year running average for serious injuries, I got some additional numbers from Chief Ford, and so I was able to calculate this. But the 5-year running average for serious injuries on all roadways up in Rhode Island at the end of 2017 was 392 serious injuries per year. In the year of 2018, we had 17 serious injuries on East Main Road in Portsmouth.
That's 5%.
That is just over 4%, 4.3%. And just to put it in perspective, RIDOT controls a total of 3,300 lane miles in the state of Rhode Island, and East Main Road, with its 18 lane miles, represents 0.5% of those roads. So it's a disproportionate number of serious injuries, and I would like to have RIDOT address these issues with us.
Okay.
I believe that was a motion.
I move that we approve the resolution. Yes.
I'll second it.
For some discussion. Sure. Do you want to begin, or?
I would love to begin.
Okay.
We're in the process of updating our comprehensive plan that has taken us, well, mostly taken Mr. Crosby, multiple years to do, and by one fell swoop of a resolution, we're going to change it, a draft plan that we haven't even seen as a council as a whole. By being further resolved that the Portsmouth Planning Department amend the draft comprehensive community plan, we haven't even gone through the community plan, but we're already going to be passing a resolution to change the community plan. It doesn't make any sense to me. The poles on East Main Road, yep, they're ugly. Yep, they're dangerous. But they also serve a secondary purpose, so it does actually slow traffic down, in my opinion. I want East Main Road paved more than anybody else. I think it should be widened like anybody else. but the overall cost of undergrounding your utilities so that 4.5 mile is going to be somewhere in that $10 million price tag. There's a lot of areas where it can be widened. If you look straight out here, I would guess we would probably lose a parking space if we widen the road wide enough, and if the DOT's right-of-way probably extends almost into a good portion of our parking lot. I think sending a resolution up to the state with demands, or I'll call them quasi-demands, they're not demands, but they're strongly worded suggestions that we want to do, may or may not, in my opinion, may send DOT in the other direction. I agree with you that the whole planning process, and part of the planning process for the northern part of East Main Road was they were going to come in, tear up the road, put the sidewalks in, and then come back in 2 years later and repave, which we reminded them was going to be silly, and they worked with us to change that. We have a decent partner in the state, DOT. They've been promising East Main Road improvements for, if you ask our friend Mr. Driscoll, who's not here tonight, since 1975. But I think we should put more of this on our state legislators to help push along these improvements than sending out resolutions that are, again, changing comprehensive plans that we haven't even approved yet or even read.
Can I just clarify one thing? We can certainly approve the draft comprehensive community plan as is. I think my wording said amend. I believe after you do a comprehensive plan, you can create an amendment, so we can cross that bridge when we come to it. And knocking a concept or idea before you actually have plans with numbers seems a little premature. I'd like to keep all options on the table as we're discussing and negotiating with RIDOT, and then come together to a plan that works for the town of Portsmouth. To use the example of East Main Road, yes, they installed sidewalks. Yes, they repaved the northern part of East Main Road. They also installed mailboxes that are 3 inches from the road and are getting knocked down by our snow plows all the time. So there's issues, and I think I'd like to see a more collaborative effort with the town, with community input, to make sure we get the improvements we need for people that ride bus, people that ride their bicycles, people that want to walk down to Clements or wherever it is. I did get several letters from people that wanted me to read them on the record, but I think you've heard my voice enough.
Mr. President? You can answer I agree with you about the mailboxes, but they're put in specifically for federal guidelines.
DOT standard.
That they break away and don't become projectiles impaling people.
I'll look to Mr. Rayner to confirm my understanding, but I understand that the comprehensive community plan is a process right now under the control of the planning board.
That's correct. The comprehensive community plan draft is finished. It's now in the hands with the consultant, and if it hasn't already been, it will be very shortly turned over to the planning board for them to deliberate, hold their public meetings, make any changes, finish that draft, and then it'll be turned over to the council. So staff work is done.
So to the point just raised about the community plan, I don't think we can direct the planning board to take a specific action like amend it. I would be more comfortable with that particular be it further resolved clause if it said, be it further resolved that the town council recommends the Portsmouth Planning Department consider amending, and that will voice the council's thoughts on the matter, and the planning board will deliver to us whatever it is they deliver to us, and we can at that point in time accept it or amend it in accordance with the proper process.
Okay.
Is that
I think the town council recommends, yes.
that the planning department consider amending?
Can I just make a suggestion? I think it would be better just to wait till it gets to the council, and then the council will hold hearings, the council, then it's the council's can change it. Instead of going back,
Don't put this in here now.
I think it'd be better-
And just amend it when it comes to us?
Well,
That's our opportunity.
yes.
well, I think I applaud Ms. Abbott for putting this together, because I've also been receiving many, many calls from constituents who are very concerned about East Main Road. And, and for one thing, all she's asking is that the comprehensive plan incorporate the Safe Streets.
Right, but that, when it's going to come to the council.
I understand
the
that,
council
but
can
there's no reason why we cannot, at this moment, embrace that as something we would like to see in the comprehensive plan. That is not dictating what the planning board has to do. It just is expressing our desire to make sure that it gets...
Specifically says amend.
But if you talk to, I mean, Mr. Crosby can address this, but when we've talked about comments on the comprehensive plan, I've always been told that we are able to, it's not final, so we are able to make our comments at any time, and that input could be made at any time. It doesn't have to be at just this one meeting.
But you're not making a request, you're creating a demand.
Well, it's to express the opinion of the town council on this issue, so I'm not exactly sure why we don't have that right at any point.
Because the statutory process is, it's the planning board's plan, and then there's public hearings on that, and then it gets referred to the town council,
Right.
and that's the appropriate time under the state statute of where the council comes in and makes whatever changes the council sees fit. But I think it's contrary to the spirit, at least, of the law on drafting comprehensive plans for the council to tell the planning board what it should be doing when it's at the planning board stage.
I'd like to make a comment. I just want to state for the record that I've been told on multiple occasions by several different people that now is the time to make sure your comments are heard on the comprehensive plan, and make sure you read it and put in comments now. I want just the record to state that I think the transportation element of our comprehensive community plan should state that green and complete streets is our transportation policy of choice. As it stands, the draft makes no mention of complete streets. That's a concern for me. I will wait till the appropriate time to amend our comprehensive community plan. I am just stating my comment for the record. I don't know if we want to vote on that or we want to just change the wording, but I just want to be clear about recommendations and expectations as to when comments come from the town council regarding the community plan.
When the public hearing the town council will be holding on the community plan, you as a citizen, I'm assuming can write a letter to Mr. Crosby or the planning board, or you could have gone to one of the meetings and made a comment, but
Sure.
as a council, our job is once it's finished with the planning board.
Yeah, just to be clear, the staff is not working on the comp plan anymore. It's turned over to the planning board
Right.
now. So we can't change the draft anymore. That has to come from the planning board through their hearings, and then you'll get another chance when you get the comprehensive plan turned over to you.
So as a town council, can we not make a recommendation to the planning board?
You can make recommendations anytime you want to the planning
think
board,
as a council,
but we can't
no, I don't-
direct them to do something.
Right, I don't
And
think...
that
And that's why we're changing the wording to
And that was the
recommendation.
purpose of my suggested amendment, was to turn it into a recommendation to consider, which they're free to take it into consideration or not.
And the recommendation of our solicitor is just to wipe it out and take care of it when we have our hearing.
And I'd be satisfied with that, too.
And you're not giving up any of the council's rights and responsibilities to, when it gets to the council, to change it as you see fit.
Mr. President, I see this as an attempt to try to show that the council has specific concerns, and not a process of trying to circumvent the comprehensive plan development. And so it seems like it's important that we make it clear where we stand. And apart from trying to play with the process. And then secondly, I'd like to address a comment that was made about how if we make a request to DOT, we're risking having what we want somehow be sidelined, that, the comment Mr. Hamilton made. I could see that maybe from the perspective of saying, well, there's an unintended consequence, but I hope, that us asking them to do the right thing is not going to have an unintended consequence of simply not getting what we want. We're asking for what we want. How is it that that is going to hurt us?
You're not, I don't see this as asking. I see threats. I see, be it further resolved that our town solicitor draft a letter to Rhode Island Department of Transportation reminding them that the complete street laws and advising that the town of Portsmouth expects all state roadways, construction projects in Portsmouth meet the laws standard of the town of Portsmouth is ready and willing to work with them. That, to me, is more of a threat than it is a request to say, hey, we're here to help. We want to work with you. These are the concerns that we have. We could do all of this with a simple phone call. Call up RODOT and say, hey, can we come down and can we talk about the tip plan? We've done that multiple times.
And it's worked so beautifully, right?
We're still in the tip. I don't know what else you want to do.
Yeah.
And we keep getting pushed back on the tip.
Well,
Clearly our approach is not working.
Because there's more tips falling down, more bridges falling down.
I don't think we have any control over the tip and the funding, and we do have, I think it's no secret, the worst bridges in the country. So a lot of the money that comes out of DOT goes to bridges. They do try to put money into safety improvements, but I think the extent of safety improvements that is kind of outlined in here is a full reconstruction of, it sounds to me like it's a full reconstruction of East Main Road, trying to underground utilities, trying to widen the road to get shoulders and sidewalks. So the comments, this is just my opinion, the comments about, some of these things, they're all valid. I mean, they're valid comments. I do support the idea of asking for a safety audit, but I think we can ask for a safety audit without 75% of what's in here. Because to my point that you guys were just talking about, the next issue on here is like on the last sentence, the last paragraph, be it further resolved that the planning department work with local and regional resources to draft green and complete street ordinances. So we don't even have these ordinances in place, but yet we're going to now require everybody to follow them, including the town. So I think we have to understand what's a green and complete street ordinance, and how is that going to impact how the town functions, how we pave our roads. I have a feeling it's going to have a big impact on how we, as a town, address the needs of our roads and moving forward. Because green and complete streets, you're talking about stormwater quality on every type of project moving forward. So let's be aware of what we're asking here, what we're committing to, and what we're going to then have to abide by. We don't even have these ordinances. So I think we need to understand what these ordinances are before we throw them into a resolution that says we're going to follow them. Just hold on a few seconds here. There's other comments in here about be it further resolved that the planning department work with the state for funding and technical assistance on developing a bike master plan. I'm pretty sure Quinnic Island Planning Commission has been working on, there's bike plans galore on this island that I think our town has been a part of, or our planning department has been a part of. There's bike paths being funded through the TIP. So to now spend resources that we don't have budgeted to go solicit to develop a bike plan, I don't see how we do that in the short term within our budget constraints. Undergrounding utilities, the town is committed to assisting the state of Rhode Island in identifying any and all resources necessary to offset the cost of undergrounding. Here's what happens when you want to underground utilities. National Grid is going to turn around to the town of Portsmouth and say, okay, we need to conduct a feasibility study. That feasibility study has a cost. Just to get National Grid to act, I don't think we're in a position to fund a feasibility study for National Grid, okay? But then, not only are you dealing with National Grid, you've got your other service providers. You need a game plan. You need right-of-way acquisition. There is so many hidden costs in undergrounding utilities that if DOT says, yeah, we'll do it, Portsmouth, and you're now going to pay for undergrounding utilities, what are we going to do? Wait a minute, sorry, we don't have the money? I mean, these are big asks, and I think we should be very careful. I'm pretty sure that they've already studied undergrounding utilities, and it is way too expensive. You know, and hear me out. If we're going to say we want to underground the utilities because the utility poles are a foot off the sidewalk, a foot off the curb, well, that's consistent with just about every road, every state highway. Now, you got East Main Road, you got West Main Road, pretty similar situation. So I think we have to be careful about what we want to ask, what we're able to commit to. I'm not sure that any of this stuff has to do with DOT conducting a safety review of East Main Road. I'm pretty sure DOT could get together with our town officials and conduct a safety review and look at what the problem is. It's a safety audit, and when they do this, their priority is to identify what the problem is and develop recommendations. I mean, we're sitting here, we're already telling them, we think you want to put new signals in and widen the road and, you know, add sidewalks. And you know what? Maybe that's the result, but why don't we just ask DOT to conduct a road safety audit and see where it goes? They've already done a partial safety audit when we asked them to look at the traffic signal, okay? They're already looking at possible road diets to address safety issues on East Main Road. Big problem on East Main Road, it's no secret. Speed limit is 35. Not many people do 35 miles an hour on East Main Road. So that's an issue. You know, that's an issue. Should we be talking to Middletown and saying, okay, we want to get together here with the town of Middletown because we're going to widen the road in Portsmouth, and then what? You're going to funnel them back in Middletown? It's not a coordinated plan. It's not something that I would support. So I think what we need to do is take a step back. There's no reason we can't ask for a road safety audit. We can work on the other issues. We can work on complete street ordinances, green streets. We can include that in our planning regs, in our roadway. That's all stuff that we can do. No question about it. It doesn't have that. None of that has to do with requesting a road safety audit for East Main Road. You know, that I get nervous about, you know, when you see some of these things on here. You know, the traffic accident statistics, these are from 2017, 2018, partial 2019. DOT is going to look probably at 5-year average. What's our average? Is it trending up, trending down? I'm pretty sure statewide accidents have been trending down. And again, these road safety audits, they're looking at what's the problem. They're not looking, I mean, utility poles do not cause the accident. The accident's caused by excessive speed, an impaired driver, a distracted driver, I hate to say it, an elderly driver, weather conditions, time of day, time of night. There's all kinds of things that go in. Sorry if I'm boring everybody, but this is what you deal with. The elderly comment, hey, I'm right, I got my card, I got my AARP card, you know. So I'm just saying, I don't want to lose focus of trying to address a safety audit, because I think we can do that. I think we have the capacity to do it. I'm just concerned with all the other stuff that's lumped in here. I'm going to say I don't support the entirety of this resolution the way it's presented. I think we can do more with less. It's my opinion.
And to piggyback on that, I think we have 2 of our state representatives sitting in the audience who are listening to this, and I think we can ask them to, hey, talk to DOT. I can almost guarantee you that if you ask DOT to come down to a future meeting to discuss safety on East Main Road, they would be here. But I just see this resolution is threatening as opposed to being a collaborative working relationship.
Mr. Jufuza?
I would just say that I don't see it as threatening so much as just expressing our legitimate concerns. We can't control DOT, that's true. We can only make recommendations, but we can advocate for the interests of our citizens. So I believe that that's what this document recommends, is that we advocate for changes that would protect our citizens. Now, as far as some of the comments that President Aguiar has made about softening some of the language so that it doesn't demand an actual incorporation, but at least a review, I would be in favor of wordsmithing this a bit to do that. But again, I think the purpose of the resolution is to acknowledge that our citizens have concerns, and we want we want our concerns addressed.
Mr. President, I just wanted to acknowledge your comments. I think you had a lot of important content and information that you added.
Thank you.
I am much more concerned about getting something accomplished and done than on any specific wording. And if there are concerns raised about the tone and about the specific way asks are phrased, I think that Mrs. Ujifuz's comment is correct, that this should be revisited and perhaps reduced in scope rather than one resolution doing, I forget how many now therefores there are, but all of these things, some more discrete. Yeah, so do some more targeted work on that.
We have some guests.
Residents.
Senator.
Hi, Jim 72 Macomber Lane.
Terry Cortfriend, 46 Mary Lane.
Welcome. Welcome.
So, you're right. In fact, RIDOT will come and do a transportation safety assessment. You know, all we have to do is ask. I talked to the lady who runs the transportation safety group department at RIDOT on Friday. She told me they just finished one in Pawtucket. They're happy to do it. It's done in conjunction with the town. Everyone just basically goes for a walk along the highway or the road that they're concerned about, and they take everybody's observations and figure out what's the right thing to do. Certainly East Main Road, and I would suggest West Main Road as well, undergo something like that. I think it probably just would maybe a letter request from the town council. Terry and I could write a letter as well asking for it. It doesn't really matter. They're there to do it. That's what they do. They do keep statistics on accidents and injuries, and it gets a little murky when you get into the actual cause of the accidents, which we found somewhat surprising. But the lady did promise me that she could lay out a Pareto, maybe a top 5 or top 10 causes for the accidents that are going on. We get into a little detail on that, so she's working on that. We hope to have it for tonight, but they haven't given it to us yet. They're also going to give us whatever the procedure is to request this assessment. Some of the other stuff, it's not my place to tell you what to put in a resolution or not, but were it I would be more targeted. Okay, I don't think RIDOT really cares that much about what Portsmouth is putting into their comprehensive plan, so I would do something separate there. So I mean, I got confused a little bit on who's this resolution for. And if it's for RIDOT, I'd keep the local aspects out, like what we're doing with our comprehensive plan. That's our business. RIDOT probably doesn't care that much about what we do with our plan. I would use their data to make the case that we have a safety issue that needs to be dealt with. Some of that data exists in the database they maintain. I haven't seen this yet, but they contend that they can't pull out causal factors for accidents. So we'll see. As soon as we see it, you guys will see it. And it certainly, something like what you're asking for might come across better if it's based on some of the actual observations from the assessment by the RIDOT experts along with our own. By the way, members of the public, you know, I'm sure there's some reasonable limits, but anybody can participate in the observations and the assessment of that hazardous stretch of road that we're concerned about.
And I would encourage you to invite DOT here, because I think you would get a better response actually having a one-on-one or council on one discussion as opposed to the letter. I would invite them here and
That would be, I think I remember, it's been some years, but we've had RIDOT standing here before. And I think that might be a better first step. And then maybe you follow up with a resolution after you have a conversation directly. That'd be my recommendation.
I would agree, 100%.
I can't remember. It's
been a while.
It's probably a month. I mean, we don't want to ask them to come to the next meeting, but maybe give them to the first meeting of October so that they can fit into a schedule. I don't know how far out everybody else has their schedules, but, you know, ask them to come on the 15th, right? Yeah, because Columbus Day is the 14th of October. Maybe we can ask the town council president to sign a letter, maybe written up by Barbara. I won't task it to the administrator, because, you know. Requesting them to come out and discuss safety concerns on East Main Road and our positioning in the tip, and if there's anything we can do to incorporate some of those safety concerns in the tip, with the caveat that if we do ask for some of those safety upgrades in the tip, that it's probably going to push those improvements out further than what they currently have planned, which I think is just a simple grinding and milling and repave.
If I could, I think the empirical data that is derived from an actual assessment will rule the day. I mean, if you want to get beyond an argument over which municipality has the most unsafe conditions and needs to be first on the list instead of you want to avoid all that, because I don't know that that's really going to lead anywhere that we want to go. If we can get them to take a look and make that assessment, I mean, they could conclude that, yeah, you do need to be accelerated in the tip, and someone else. Now, I mean, it's part of their, for lack of a better word, their triage process for determining the priority of the tip projects. It is a pretty disciplined process. I've been watching it for years now. One of the reasons that some of our projects got pushed back was because the General Assembly inserted itself into the planning process several years ago. Let me point out that was before my time, okay? But, you know, there's a whole bunch of work going on at the mouth of the Pell Bridge, okay? Well, the money to do that, some of which came from our projects, which got pushed out somewhat, okay? And that was done by RIDOT because the General Assembly passed legislation directing them to do so. So, I mean, RIDOT can't really change the tip anyway on their own. It has to go to the State Planning Commission for that to happen. They make their recommendations, which, as we just saw, are by and large upheld by the commission. But it is a pretty disciplined thing, and I don't think anybody's playing games with it. I do not believe that even if this resolution went to RIDOT, I don't believe there would be retribution in some way taken against us. I would avoid the part about, hey, you're breaking the law, so how about straightening yourself out? I don't think it's our purview to say that. But, you know, there is absolutely no harm in asking for stuff, okay? I would take a larger measure of care in how you're doing that. And I would also align your asks to a particular thing that a particular agency has sway over. So you might want to think about that with some of the stuff that's in the whereases. But I mean, you're doing your duty, you know, to advocate for the town, and that's fine. I'm looking for a way that gets done and is effective. And in my view, I would wait and use RIDOT's data to convince RIDOT that something needs to be done. So,
No, I would agree, and it would be nice to have RIDOT here, because there is a project on the tip that, is it says East Main Road, shared use path. From Headley Street to Enterprise Drive.
Yeah, I've asked some questions about that myself, but I haven't gotten a response
any
yet.
plans, so that's, from here to halfway into Middletown. That's a
Right.
shared use path, so that's sidewalk/bicycle, so it's got to go somewhere. So some
Where?
of these issues may be getting, now would be a good time to have a conversation. If you
Agreed.
can't get answers.
I did ask
Right.
last week, and I'm waiting for
So-
a reply on that.
So, I think we're not losing sight of the road safety audit. That should be our primary objective.
Absolutely.
Get the road safety audit, and then other stuff can follow systematically, because the road safety audit should identify the problems,
Right.
and it should identify also near-term and long-term solutions. And that should be step one for not only town of Portsmouth, but also our neighbors in Middletown, because it's, you're traveling from Portsmouth into Middletown. It's the same road. So we should get, maybe we can get some support from the
And
Middletown
we can
town.
remind them about the road diet, too.
Can I respond to some of the comments that have been made so far? Well, first of all, I will say that to your comments, President Aguirre, that we're not actually adopting an ordinance right now. We're requesting a draft of a green and complete streets ordinance, so I would hope that we would consider the ordinance when it's presented to us and not before that. The ordinance doesn't exist. We have to draft an ordinance for our town. There's been one town or city in Rhode Island that has passed one so far, that's Central Falls. I think we can use that as an example and change it to suit our needs, but let's cross that bridge when we come to it. This is also not a budget document, so nobody's asking anybody to commit any funds to anything. This resolution is a statement of our intentions, desires, and requests. And I feel very strongly that it is important to include all these elements in one resolution, because all these things that are mentioned in this resolution are intrinsically related and completely, sorry, I'm blanking out of the word, but they're intrinsically related, and they all have to do with the projects that happen on East Main Road. If we're going to do road improvements, we have to consider all those things. We have to consider all those elements. It isn't a pick and choose kind of thing. We need to step back, take a comprehensive approach, and try to figure out how to get the most out of our money for this project, and try to incorporate as many of these things as we can. This idea of shooting things down or nitpicking or pulling them out before we have even looked at a comprehensive plan for the restructuring and, yes, reconstruction of all these of East Main Road, because I do think that's what it's going to take to make it the road that we want for the next 30 years. Then we have to consider bus stops, we have to consider pedestrians, we have to consider bike lanes, and we have to consider stormwater. We have to look at all those things together as they relate to this one big project, and it needs to be a back and forth with RIDOT. And the fact that it keeps getting pushed back on the tip, and the fact that we're not even talking about the plan yet, or the project, or we don't have any concepts that we've discussed or that we've met on RIDOT on, means it's just going to keep getting pushed back, because there's no way they're going to be ready to go with it in 2024. I'm telling you that right now, from where we are now, to get to being able to build in 2024 is just not going to happen. And Senator Sept, to address yes, I would love to use RIDOT data on all of this. Unfortunately, they don't publish all their data, so the data that I included here is just to make the public aware of the information we do have. It's the information, there's numbers from RIDOT, there's numbers from Federal Highway Authority, whatever it's called. There's numbers from our police department, and there's numbers from our fire department. I didn't invent any of these numbers. They're all from very well-respected sources, and this is the data we have to work with to assess our own situation. We're asking them to come, do a review, give us more information so we really know what we're doing with. But at the end of the day, when they want to work on a plan for Portsmouth, it has to take into account all these things. So this document just makes a clear statement of what all our asks are, to make sure we're on the same page and we understand all the important elements that need to go into it. And why wouldn't you ask for everything that you want right now?
So, like I said, ask for whatever you want. I'd pay attention to who I'm asking, because RIDOT doesn't have anything to do with bus stops. It doesn't have anything to do with undergrounding utilities. so they're not really going to pay any attention to that stuff. So I would just, if you're going to make these requests, well, you got to talk to RIPTA about the bus stops. You know, you got to talk to National Grid about the utility work. And I agree, all of this stuff needs to be coordinated through some sort of a system engineered approach. So it would come back to RIDOT and what their schedule is for the work they're going to do on the road to try to get this other stuff done as well. And it's just my suggestion that you make sure you understand who's responsible for acting on the things that you want acted on.
Well, it's a group effort, right? It's not just RIDOT, it's the town, it's the planning department.
Okay.
There's a lot of moving pieces that need to come together for this road to get fixed in a comprehensive way.
I
So
agree.
the resolution is not just for RIDOT, I think that's pretty clear, but I don't think we're going to pass a resolution for RIDOT, one for National Grid, one for RIPTA. We need one comprehensive statement of everything we want and wish for and desire and want to look at, considering for East Main Road. We're not committing to any plans, we're not committing to any funds. It's just a statement of the concerns and desires that we have for East Main Road, and I think it's very important to have them all in one document so that in 3 years, when we're arguing about some other little piece of this element, we said, well, we said we should look at that, so let's look at that. So that was my intention with the document.
Fair enough.
Mr. President, if I may,
Sure.
again, I mean, I believe it's been 25 minutes, 30 minutes, but there is a motion and a second to pass this as it is? Okay. So I wouldn't make another motion at this point, just not to confuse things, but
Done with us?
it is
Yeah.
my hope that we just, and this...
Thank you.
I'll say this now to get it out for the next piece. I think we should ask DOT to come down to review the East Main Road project from Turnpike out, which includes the Town Center project, where they're at with it, what their new thoughts are with it. You know, it started out as 3 roundabouts, now it's down to maybe just 1 roundabout, might not be down to anything. I think we should just have an audience with DOT and review everything that they have planned from Mitchell's Lane to Turnpike Avenue in the town of Portsmouth.
And I will argue that I think it's important to make a clear statement to our constituents as to what our needs, wants, asks, and objectives are with East Main Road. And by just sending a letter to DOT and not making a public statement of our intentions, we do not accomplish that.
Okay.
I want our constituents to know exactly what we want and think we need to work towards with East Main Road. And a letter to DOT doesn't get that for us.
Mr. Grebe, come on up.
Thank you.
Join the party.
I'm going to try to
Don't
raise
touch
this.
the
Oh!
Is it working?
It's working.
Okay. I don't want to prolong this too long, so I'll be as quick as I possibly can. But I want to start with, my heart goes out to the people that were injured in the East Main Road accidents. I happened to see 2 of the 3, and I'm amazed that people weren't killed. But I want you to think about some other things as well. Because we live on a relatively small island, highway transportation is a closed system with only 3 entrances and exits, our bridges. You cannot make changes to one major artery on this island without affecting the others. A systems engineering approach is needed to the East Main Road, not an isolated problem-solving approach, which is what I saw in the RIDOT backup. Almost anything done to East Main Road will impact West Main Road. The accident frequency on West Main Road is very similar to East Main Road, but with the higher speed limits, the results of those accidents are often far worse. Several fatal accidents have occurred on West Main Road in the last few years. That needs to be considered. Looking at East Main Road in isolation could just push traffic onto West Main Road, making a worse traffic problem there. East Main Road is not a new issue. All of this has been discussed with the large group of involved citizens, our planning board, and our town planner during the comprehensive plan development. These issues and potential solutions were well debated using holistic views of a comprehensive plan rather than looking for a solution to an isolated road problem. The council should review those recommendations. Asking the state to solve this problem is a curious approach to me. Previously, RIDOT failed to use $400,000 of $900,000 they were given to design the town center. RIDOT did produce a 3-roundabout town center, which, in my opinion, would have been a disaster. In Warwick, where a similar design was actually implemented, driving it resembles a bumper car ride, in my opinion. East Main Road is RIDOT's responsibility, but they have let East Main Road get into its present condition of disrepair. The state mothballed the police barracks when state police patrols could measurably have helped our East Main and West Main Road situations, especially in the summer. Hiring our own consultant rather than asking the state to come up with yet another East Main Road solution would seem to be a more productive one and should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grade. Mr. Roberts.
Peter Roberts, 80 Armard Avenue. I want to make mention to your accidents, all right? A lot of accidents on this road are because of conditions of the road. My wife was driving past Stub Toe Lane before she got to Pine Tree, and that part of the road is very rough. She's driving along, they had filled the hole there. This wasn't 2 months later. She's driving along, she knows it's all right, but the stuff had come out of the hole. She hit that hole, and the tie rod end came right out of the tie rod, and that tire was just flapping. She went off the road into the front lawn. Luckily, did not hit a pole. But that accident was for that reason. And as many times I'm driving down this road, and people pass me easily doing 75 miles an hour.
They do.
That's other accidents. And then people texting are accidents. All right? How many accidents have happened right out this intersection? Because there's no traffic light. And people are coming down, and when you're on a road like this, you don't ride in the passing lane. You get over in the right-hand lane. Because when people are turning off the road, they got to wait for the traffic coming this way. That's when you see people swerve back into the right lane, and that causes accidents. Now, on the 4th of July, when I left Escobar's, I went to Mill Lane, went down on West Main Road, and I'm going along, and somebody came out of a driveway, plowed right into the side of my car. He thought he had the right of way, but he smelled like a bar room. Most of your accidents are other people's faults. And the people who get hurt, usually it's because of the people who are driving recklessly. And it's all because the roads are not fixed. Potholes, they fill up, a few months later, they're holes again. And as far as bicycle paths, when I was in 1955, I started my first paper route. I lived at Redwood Farms and I moved out of Island Park. My paper route went all the way up to Melville and a little past it. All the way the other direction to Oliphant Lane. I went up Oliphant Lane, back Union Street, had Jefferson Lane, and went to Union Street, and sometimes I did a few on Middle Road, but I rode a bicycle at that age and never got hit. So people, if they don't know how to ride a bicycle, they shouldn't. But all those years, I did it for almost 5 years, never got hit by a car. But I go along now and I see people on bicycles doing this when they're riding. When they pedal, they go back and forth. They don't belong on the road. And they certainly don't belong on East Main Road. And that's a lot of the problems. Now, I've gone Union Street. When people are riding in the middle of the lane or come from the side again, that's their problems. They don't watch what they're doing. And I think if you ride a bicycle on East Main Road, I think you have suicidal tendencies. I really do, okay? There's no doubt about it. And the thing with the accidents have already been there. I'm from here, and I've never had an accident on East Main Road. Now, I had the one on the 4th over here, but I haven't had any accidents. It's my fault.
Yeah.
And it's reckless driving, texting, and everything else. And if you look up those, you'll probably find a lot of them were under the influence. But a lot of that, when it goes into court, they don't push that.
Mm-hmm.
They let a lot of that slide. So you don't have the right stats there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Hi, Chris Reeves. I live on Corey's Lane. I work in marine biology, so I've seen a lot of weird
stuff in nature and animals doing really crazy things, but last spring I saw one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. There was a Canada goose that tried to land and perch on the power lines on East Main, which was the most awkward and led to sort of the most terrifying idea of that happening along all of our power lines. Not that I'm saying that that's going to become a thing that we have to worry about getting goosebumps dropped on us from our city streets, but saying that power poles on the side of the road have the net effect of slowing down traffic is a little like saying that the power poles being there caused that poor bird to do something undignified. It's just not realistic. It's a bit of an overreach, I think. We have to do something about East Main. We've been talking about this, and what I've heard so far from people that have lived here far longer than I is that we've been talking about this for a really long time, but we haven't actually done anything in a directed way. People are trying to shoot down this the potential future money issues or split it up for different agencies to deal with, but according to this resolution, we're not asking for money. We're not asking anyone to do anything except consider our opinion as a group, as a town, that there's a holistic view of what we want to do when it comes time to do something, and also to identify potential funding to do that. We haven't put anything in this that says give us the money, we're holding you to it, and I personally don't feel particularly threatened by the wording in this. I think that it's not really a far reach for us to, as a group, say, hey, if we're going to do this in this in an ideal world, this is what we would like, and how do we identify the ways to do that and the agencies to work with to get that done. Picking it apart ahead of time seems like we're jumping the gun, and again, like a bit of an overreach right now. I think I would like to see it passed as is, because it does include not only public safety, but the one other issue that I think is super important in there is this building in green infrastructure, because this is something that affects all of our drinking water, all the water that we like to bathe in, sail in, surf in. This is one of the biggest draws to our community in tourism, but also one of the reasons that we all like to live here. We're the ones that are going to experience that water most often, and why wouldn't we go ahead and say, yeah, we want to have cleaner water for us, so that we have improved health and also improved safety in our streets. It doesn't make sense to try to pick this apart and shoot it down right now at this stage, when all we're saying is, hey, these are the things that we would like, and how do we identify the ways to do that going forward. I think we're all jumping the gun. I'm glad that everyone's given their firm opinion. There's mine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi.
Hi.
Tracy Basketball. I live down here on Middle Road. I'm one of those suicidal people that ride my bicycle on East Main Road. I also walk my dog on Middle Road. I run on Middle Road. I walk on the side of East Main Road. On a safety point, the roads are not safe. The gentleman before last saying about bicycle riders swerving on the roads, that's because you're avoiding the potholes. I am entitled as a taxpaying car driver to also ride my bicycle on East Main Road. And when I do it safely, but I have to take the whole lane because the side of the road is not safe. I do get off East Main Road as fast as I can, but there's no other route to get down to the Seconic River Bridge, which has a bike lane that goes over to Tiverton. I ride many hundreds of miles on my bicycle, and there's some people here that know that I do that. I choose not to do them in this town. It's not safe. It's safer in Tiverton, it's safer in Little Compton, it's safer in North Kingston, South Kingston, Jamestown. Fortunately, we have the East Bay bike path. I also ride in Providence City, and I feel safer in Providence than I do on the roads here in Portsmouth. I won't let my children ride their bicycles on the road in Portsmouth. It is just not safe. And I just want to point out that if you have that infrastructure for people to walk, people to ride, it's going to support previous discussions from here tonight about an arts centre or a sports centre. If children and families can get themselves to an arts centre without having to rely on somebody giving them a ride. Not all children in this town have access to get a ride to and from school, to and from sports programs. They miss out on those scenarios. It's important for the town to have that infrastructure so that our children can get out, be safe, walk to their soccer game or their baseball game or their art program or their school. My girls can't walk home from the high school they want to, believe me, they want to. It takes a bit of persuasion at times, but they do. If they accidentally, not thinking because they're teenagers, are on the wrong side of East Main Road when they come up the hill, they have to walk all the way to St. Barnabas to come all the way back down Middle Road. There is no safe places for children to cross the streets. I know there are crossings, but there's nothing indicating those crossings, right? You cannot safely cross the road in many places in Portsmouth, and it's not okay. You can't cross the road safely at the bottom of Headley. I see the same people catching buses there because I commute to Providence every day. I wonder how the hell they get across the street at the bottom of Headley to get to those bus stops. It's not safe. There needs to be more crossings, and it needs to be more accessible for our kids to get around town, go to their friends' houses, and not have to rely on a ride from their parents to and from school, to and from their friends, to and from their sports programs. Just please keep focusing on this project. Even if, like RIDOT don't want to fund these great projects, as a town, we need to put in those safeties for our kids to simply cross the street. It's important. Before, there are worse accidents than there was like at the St. Barnabas Festival. And there's a crossing there, but nobody knows there's a crossing there because you can't see the crossing. It's important. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So, I would just like to clarify one statement, and Mr. Rayner, I might need you to just let me know if I'm off base. In this resolution that's proposed, it says, be it further resolved, the town of Portsmouth hereby requests the East Main Road STIP improvements incorporate the undergrounding of utilities on East Main Road to provide additional right-of-way for necessary improvements. So we're asking DOT to incorporate undergrounding utilities. The only way that they're going to incorporate that is if we provide a feasibility study. DOT is not going to pay for that feasibility study. The town of Portsmouth would have to pay for that feasibility study, okay? The town of Portsmouth that cost could be in the thousands of dollars, in the $20,000, $30,000 for National Grid, just to evaluate a feasibility study. If we have to design, and say they approve it, if we have to design undergrounding utilities, we still have to put up streetlights, so we're still going to have poles somewhere along East Main Road, okay? We're still going to have poles because you got streetlights. All of the right-of-way that's associated with undergrounding those utilities becomes the town of Portsmouth's responsibility. Securing easements, the town would have to pay for that, the legal fees, the land acquisition fees. So now you've got folks that have overhead power lines that go from East Main Road to their house. Well, now they're going to have an underground service that goes from East Main Road to their house. So now you're talking about potential private property improvements. There's a lot of hidden costs in undergrounding utilities. So unless I'm mistaken, it says we're asking them to include undergrounding utilities. So I think we are asking, and I think we are potentially committing ourselves to spending money. Am I wrong? Mr. Rayner?
Question to me. I'm already the bad guy tonight, so it's obviously when I got the resolution, I mean, the first thing I did is I did my due diligence and I reached out to National Grid. But before I reached out to National Grid, I reviewed my notes. Keith Hamilton, I believe you were the president at the time. Gary Crosby, the president, myself, I believe there was one other person, met with DOT to discuss the town center project. At that time in 2000, I've been here 4 years now, so 4 years ago, at that time, that project would include, if it had included the undergrounding of utilities, made it the third most expensive road project, transportation improvement project in the TIP for DOT. They had done a feasibility study and they had determined that it was too expensive. They did not give us the numbers. I know that the rule of thumb is $1 million a mile. I reached out to our liaison at National Grid to get a little further explanation of what that number means. That number just means perfect scenario, perfect soils, you have the easements, everything's good to go, and you're not worried about second, third, fourth providers that are on the pole, antennas or streetlights, just to get a cable in the ground, $1 million a mile. I'm not going to bore everybody. I'll just give some summaries. I don't think DOT is going to pay for this. They've already done it. So it seems to me that it would be incumbent upon the municipality to pay for this, and this is National Grid's understanding. So we would have to initiate an undergrounding request. They would accept that request and determine if the request is possible. National Grid would require a feasibility study be conducted. To do the feasibility study, it would be our responsibility to sign an agreement letter. We would have to pay a study fee. We would have to provide the CAD drawings. We would have to provide commitment letters for each and every account and customer involved with the undergrounding, and then we would provide the work request. It takes about 4 months to do this. That feasibility study would provide a conclusion as to whether that request is even possible. They determine the limits of the undergrounding, and it's not just, I've learned more about this in the past few months than I ever cared to know, but it's not just the area that you want undergrounded. They have to go to the end of the line, wherever that end of the line may be, and I'm not that familiar with the utilities. So it ultimately means that the area requested to be undergrounded might ultimately be larger or maybe even smaller, but in our case, most likely larger. Then they produce a study grade estimate, and they will only estimate to within 50%. So the number they give you may be off by 50%.
I'm sorry, Mr. Rayner, can I interrupt you for a
Yes.
second? Can I amend my resolution to just eliminate that specific, be it further resolved? Because I do think that the utility poles is an issue that is going to come up and have to be discussed when we're looking at the redesign of the road as a whole. And I have a second resolution on the agenda that I hope can help address that as well. So I don't think we
Sure,
have
yeah,
to specifically ask that.
it wasn't my intent to try to influence you. I just want to make sure people got the
No.
facts. And
I understand it's not an easy problem to solve. It's a very challenging problem to solve. It's not cheap, it's expensive, it's complicated. I think we're going to have to address it as part of the safety review of the road. So I'm willing to eliminate that one specific, be it further resolved, that if that is going to, the one thing that's going to cause so many headaches.
Well, you have to do them both.
What's that?
The next one, too. Be it
Fine.
further resolved, the town Portsmouth committed to assisting the state of Rhode Island in identifying all resources.
Then let's eliminate both of those. I think the safety and usability and transportation alternatives concepts and desires for our town are captured in the rest of the resolution. But, Mr. Rayner, feel free to continue. I'm sorry.
I think everybody got the point. I mean, and you nailed it on the head. It's quite an extensive and expensive proposition that would probably be incumbent upon us to pay for. Obviously, I've been listening very intently tonight, and I think, if we can get National Grid here, readdress this discussion, have them, as has been proposed, give us an update. It's been 4 years. What are your plans regarding the Town Center project in East Main Road? And let's see where that discussion goes and make it clear to them that while they have made a decision not to underground the utilities, perhaps it is still our position that we would like to see them try to incorporate that in the project.
At a minimum, I think it behooves us to do a little bit more research and figure out what it would take and what our options are, because when you look at the number of accidents and the cost of the accidents, we are paying for it one way or another, and it's not an easy problem to solve, but I think it needs to be a serious consideration. We do have a motion, we have a second. There are some amendments. Do we need to clarify those amendments?
I think that would be very helpful.
So we struck 2, be it further resolved. The one that says the town of Portsmouth hereby requests the East Main Road STIP improvements incorporate undergrounding of utilities, yada, yada, yada. And the following one that says that the town of Portsmouth is committed to assisting the state of Rhode Island in identifying any and all resources, yada, yada, yada. In addition to that, the second to last, be it further resolved, we amended to state, be it further resolved that the town council recommends that the planning department consider amending our draft comprehensive community plan to identify green and complete streets, yada, yada, yada.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we need to accept the amendments?
Second, yeah, well-
Second the amendments?
So she just has to amend her second to...
I'll second the amendment.
To incorporate her, that's all.
Okay. So we're voting on the amendments.
No, we're not voting on the amendment, because Danielle,
did
it was
it.
Danielle's motion, so she's just amending her motion on her own.
We're all on the same page.
I wasn't.
Did you have a
Mr.
question?
Kelly have a-
Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question
Mr. Kelly.
for Mr. Gavin. Well, Attorney Gavin. Solicitor
Yeah.
Gavin. How many hours do you think it's going to take to draft this letter? Well, I guess write this letter to RIDOT.
I'll basically say what it says in the resolution.
Just that.
Well, it says you drafted it, doesn't say it's coming from me. Would it be better coming from
It's true.
from the administrator? They wanted to review this statute that's referred to, which I have never seen, or that I recall. But
Yeah, if I may, I think the letter could come from Mr. Rayner, and I'm sure he can take the language,
I could draft it.
cast it in as diplomatic tones as he is typically capable of doing.
Wait a minute.
And this is a resolution that we are passing for the town not to be sent to RIDOT. Am I correct?
No, this is a resolution that if this is approved, it's going to RIDOT versus
didn't say
us.
that.
No, it doesn't say that, actually.
It doesn't say sent to state reps, doesn't say sent to RIDOT, it doesn't say any of those things. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm making a point to get that determination.
It does request us to, it says, request the state of Rhode Island to immediately conduct a safety review. However, we
So
put
that's
that
a
request, that's
letter,
one
yeah.
letter, and then another letter reminding of the complete streets law.
Okay, so I am correct.
So it's a resolution
Yes.
stating our
Yes.
intentions and requiring the drafting of 2 letters.
Okay, I'm good.
Mr. President, I just want to say that I think one of the reasons Ms. Abbott put this on the agenda is that we are now in the process of determining how Mr. Rayner and staff are going to prioritize their time, and she wanted to make sure that this was going to, come up in that conversation. And I think that really helps in terms of transparency, because a lot of times people didn't know what we were prioritizing to act on, and this would make it clear that this would be one of those priorities for our town administrator.
Yes, to be clear, I think this needs to be a priority,
Well,
in case it wasn't.
I agree, and I think every counselor up here has made it pretty clear that conducting a safety review of East Main Road is a priority, and I think everyone up here would support that. I think where we disagree, or at least may agree to disagree, is the content of the rest of the stuff in here, where I think we even heard from our legislators that, maybe if we were a little more concise and focused on what our ask to DOT is, it may be an easier request. I have no problem sending a letter to DOT asking them to conduct a safety audit. I do have an issue with all the other stuff in here that I don't think is really relevant to DOT coming down here and conducting a safety audit. That's just my opinion, and so be it.
But we're not sending this resolution to DOT. Mr. Rayner is writing a letter to DOT requesting a safety audit.
Still a resolution on the books.
Correct, so that our constituents can know exactly what our intentions are.
Understood?
And what our motivations are, and what our priorities are. And I think it's important to make it pretty clear.
I would hope that all of our constituents already know that their safety and the safety of everybody who travels East Main Road is a priority and has been a priority for years.
I disagree. I've spoken to a lot of constituents that are concerned that we're not doing enough to prioritize East Main Road, and I want them to know that
We're trying.
we're trying.
So we put it in paper.
So we put it in paper.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second.
Just one more question. For Mr. Crosby. When, how much time do you need on these ordinances? We talking months, or, I'm just curious.
Not to put you on the
Can I-
spot.
Not to put you on the spot.
And to clarify, I did say use regional resources. I do think there are regional resources that will help us draft an ordinance. So I'm, you know,
But we are directing the town planner to do that.
correct.
And I think along with that
Of course, that
direction,
would be standard planning procedure to use all the resources that were necessary. I would-
Yes, thank you.
I wouldn't be excluding anything. I guess I don't need to have town council tell me that I need to use all the resources necessary to draft an ordinance.
Okay, maybe that goes without saying, but again, I think it's important to put it in writing.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion passes 5-2.
Mr. President, I would make a motion along that line that we send a letter or send a request to DOT to come and give you presentation on the status of all the upgrades on East Main Road and also the Town Center project at our first meeting in October, which is the 15th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay. Let's go to
Town Center.
new business. What?
Mr. President, it is 10:10. I think Mr. Rayner understands that the next resolution is one of what I think should be a priority as well, but I'm willing to table it till October if we want to go home and go to bed.
Second the motion to table.
I third that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
This meeting exceeds the attention span of, right?
We have correspondence.